And not penalties, but.
Yeah.
Just at least.
But I really want to see this.
There's some improvements that.
Some of the transportation. One of the girls also very big.
Yeah. How you doing, man? Good.
Is this breaking news, Steve?
Yeah, look out.
Yeah, look at.
I mean, I have to be here, or I won't hear about it for a couple of days, never get the name.
Yeah.
So. Oh, here I
Did you
am.
print that whole thing out? Did you? I know, I asked Brent to print it and I didn't look at how many pages it was. I realized it's 200 pages, like. You only brought one copy?
Yeah.
I did.
No.
I went to Germany, it's the kid of. Right off, they told me like 40. So
Oh.
I was like, okay.
Printed it on my printer for
$18.
$1.50.
$18.
That's really fun.
Do it, not color.
These are my other.
Oh, I don't know. I wanted legal. It's here.
Just pick me out of the history.
That is a good idea.
Pretty sure it's not. This was more than regular.
I could see like. I was, after like.
Yeah.
I can read on my phone. I pulled out my,
Not much better.
yeah, well, I have double monitors.
That would be awesome.
What's that? Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Thanks.
This is my.
You're like.
This might.
You picked yourself.
Yeah.
No, I'm just.
We haven't come to the meeting.
I know, I'm glad that you haven't done that prior to the meeting. It's gotta be a customer or something.
You know, and I have kind of, I just
Oh,
sit there.
yeah, great Monday then.
Minutes.
Proud of it.
I was on the road most of the day, so that's
Well,
probably why.
that helps.
You get letters out. Oh. A week.
Right.
Okay.
I'll double check that. Is that just for like that? And I found out. Less than that because I have to.
That's good.
Let's go.
Mine's 20 years. 14, but
Come up with
I'll
something.
have them on the
Yes, that's fine.
and then I'll give the minutes.
No.
I'll put this on the minutes. Oh, yeah, what I have in, yeah. Okay.
No.
Very good.
There.
There you go.
You have.
I just, it's so.
Yeah.
I just sent it.
Normally what we do
Not good, I can't pick it out by the-
What do you know today? Well,
I was definitely. I was Demographic. Everything we do.
So I'll talk here about it. You'll, do you know how we have it?
That's what I'm.
Let me just on that back.
All right, and Ash said he might be coming.
Yeah, Ash will be here.
It's his birthday today, I think, it's 21st, it's your birthday.
It's nice.
I did see a Facebook. Yeah.
What do you mean?
We got Master Ken.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, no.
Is it your 21st? It's your 21st. Right on. You have your new ID. Yeah, I think you do actually. Yeah.
Midnight, and I- also power.
But I think now, I don't even think about
You were not.
Hey, we ready to go?
Dan? You wanna get with Barry? Okay. All right, call to order for Watertown Work City Council and Park and Rec Board work session for April 8th of 2024. We're gonna rise. I do not see a, yeah, there's a flag. So we're gonna rise and we're gonna hear a quick prayer from Councilor Cuddy.
Heavenly Father, thank you for this day that we get together in this facility. We get together as citizens with responsibilities to gather and make decisions to help further this community in a better direction. So we just ask for your wisdom, your guidance, your leading in this conversation today, and that you be glorified as we grow as a city. Lord, pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Finance Officer Bob Dean, please call the roll.
Benny, Teddy,
Here.
Pepper.
Here.
Mueller.
Here.
Danforth,
Here.
Colleen,
Here.
Durin,
Here.
Peters,
He's excused.
absent. Thank you.
All right, quorum is established. I'm going to, first, I will take a motion to approve, actually, I'm gonna wait. Chairman Graff, if you would like to call the park board to order.
Sure. Oh, I forgot. Yeah.
Here.
Thank you. We're in order.
Okay. Call your roll.
Oh.
I think they were just in
Does it not need-
We're in notice.
Yeah.
Okay.
They were just in notice for.
Okay, just notice, yeah, because.
And we have a quorum of 4 of us.
Okay.
Yep.
Fair enough. All right, Chair will entertain motion to approve today's agenda. Motion made by Councilman Tupper, seconded by Councilman Shetty. Any conversation on that? Motion is to approve the agenda. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. First item on the agenda is a Parks Master Plan presentation. I'll pass it off to our Park and Rec Director, Dusty Rodick.
Okay, well, thank you everybody for coming, Park Board, Council, Mayor. I'd like to introduce David and Annie of Stockwell Engineering. They've been the main parts of putting together a Parks Master Plan over the course of the last year. And they're here to give a presentation of the findings and pretty much nearly a final draft, unless there's any substantial changes this evening. So with that, I will let them get started.
All right.
Yeah, yes.
What's the expectation from the council after this presentation?
Yeah, I would like to know what the expectation is. Is this just informative? And then also I would like to know in how you would like to field the questions as it's going along. Wait to the end.
I would say let's wait till the end, just that way we can get through all of the information. Unless, I guess I'm okay with you guys interrupting me. If it's something that pertains to something that we haven't addressed yet, then I'll just say we'll get to that here in a minute. But
Sure.
if you guys have questions as we go through it, I'm happy to entertain them.
And feel free to take notes for questions that you can wait to the end to ask, but what is the expectation for hearing this plan?
barring any substantial changes that you all request, we'd like to place it on the April 15th agenda for adoption.
All right, sounds good. Thank you guys for allowing us here to come tonight to present the final draft for the Parks and Rec Master Plan. My name is David Locke. I'm lead landscape architect with Stockwell. Also have Annie here, landscape architect for Stockwell as well, to help go through this. This presentation is not all encompassing of the report. The report itself is 200+ pages of information. So I'm going to go through all of that fairly quickly, somewhat high level, just for sake of time. But certainly as we go through it, if you guys have specific questions, be happy to answer them, or, direct you to kind of where they are in the report. So thank you guys for allowing us to come here this evening. So we started this process the first part of last year with kind of going through an understanding of what you guys currently have from an existing facility standpoint. And then also went through a fairly extensive public input session where we met with different stakeholder groups, invited the public to come in. And then we also had a statistically valid survey that was conducted throughout the community as well. We took all of that information, the public input, our analysis of your guys' existing facilities, and developed recommendations that break down into really 9 categories from a high level standpoint. But then within each of those categories are a number of kind of sub bullets or kind of more direction that's more specific regarding those recommendations. So that's really kind of a high level version of the path that we went through. So the final report is broken out into 7 chapters with appendices. So the appendices have the really kind of the detailed questions and report from the statistically valid survey. It has a listing of all of your park facilities and what's in each park. And then a number of other information that, just for kind of sake of time, has a lot of information that we're not going to go through on a regular basis. But chapter 1 is really the executive summary. 2 takes a look at your existing community, looking at demographics within the community. Chapter 3 goes through the community engagement process that we went through. Chapter 4 is inventory and analysis. So we'll go through kind of the existing park facilities that you guys have. Chapter 5 is specific to looking at the city auditorium as well as the old ice arena. So we looked at both of those buildings in chapter 5. Chapter 6 then takes a look at kind of operations of the park system and management of the park system. And then 7 is the action plan. So that's where we go through our recommendations and from a high level, but then also kind of a step-by-step for each of those categories. And then also, kind of high level capital costs for kind of each of those recommendations as well. So from an executive summary standpoint, so looking at your overall community, there are 37 parks that we went through and evaluated that are distributed throughout your community. In terms of the profile, so the projected annual growth rate is slightly higher than state and national average. While there's some other items there in terms of looking at the demographics of your community, both on kind of annual growth rate historically, as well as looking at minority populations is a little bit less than state and national average, as well as per capita income and median household income. So that's kind of looking at the community as a whole in comparison to the state and national averages from a demographic standpoint. And we utilized census data, and we also looked at your kind of recent housing study that was done, as well as kind of pulling information from various public documents. In terms of looking at the community from a park standpoint, we also want to look at not just how Watertown is doing, nationally, but also how do you compare to some of your neighbors? So we looked at how Watertown compares to Brookings and Aberdeen from a park acre standpoint, from a number of trails standpoint, and then also from a number of staff. So in terms of, Watertown is highlighted there in kind of the orange for each of those items. So in terms of park acres, Watertown has a little over 700 acres of developed park land. That equates to 31 developed acres per 1,000 residents. And that's really the benchmark that we look at, is how many acres per 1,000 residents. And that's what NRPA, so National Recreation and Park Association, that National Parks Association, that's how they kind of equate and look at their data throughout the community and throughout the nation as well. So 31 acres of developed parkland per 1,000 residents is high. That's high, and that's good. That's good in terms of being able to have that much public space. A lot of communities are less than that. And so in terms of when you add in managed acres, you guys are a little over 1,100 total acres, and that bumps that up even higher to almost 50 acres per 1,000 residents of parkland, which is really good in terms of parkland. When you look at trails, so Watertown has 28.5 trails, which is also miles of trails, which is also higher than Brookings and Aberdeen. That equates to 1.25 trail miles per 1,000 residents. So again, kind of looking at the metrics of that, normally communities are in that 0.25 to 0.5 miles of trail per 1,000 residents. So you guys exceed that as well in terms of your trail miles. Staffing and volunteers. So we looked at Brookings and then also looked at the NRPA median. So we kind of brought in the national averages there in the bottom. So in terms of acres per 1,000 residents, 31 acres that we looked at. Total park staff, kind of looking at full-time employees, 11.1. Dusty works 10% better than everybody else, so that's the 0.1. So we have 11.1 full-time employees. That equates to 4.9 full-time resident or full-time employees per 10,000 residents. So if you compare that to Brookings, Brookings has 7 park staff per 10,000 residents. The national average is 10.7 park staff per 10,000 residents, and acres managed, you can see here, so we're managing 31 acres per 1,000 residents. Brookings is at 20, the national average is at 11. So we're at more acres per resident, managing it with less people than what we should. It's kind of the gist of what we're getting to here from a staff standpoint. So in terms of looking at additional staff to achieve the benchmark, so if you wanted to kind of match Brookings in terms of how many staff are available to take care of your parkland, you need to add, about 5 more staff members. Yes, sir.
A question for you. Is that, when you look at that, are you looking at part-time? In other words, maybe we got way more part-timers than Brookings does. Is that a part of your equation?
It's mostly looking at full-time staff.
I mean, wouldn't that certainly have an effect on that if we had a lot more part-timers than Brookings or?
Yeah, go ahead,
There's,
Dusty.
I believe, another table later on in there that does account for, it is full-time equivalent. So that does calculate staffing costs, staffing both full-time and seasonal.
David,
That's one question.
yeah,
This is city properties only. It's not state.
correct.
Any property that's in or county that's in the city.
Correct. And we do have a map later that shows kind of where that state and county property is. We do factor that into the level of service when we get to that. But in terms of looking at parkland maintained, we just looked at city property.
David? So, I mean, I can understand the employees per 10,000 citizens ratio being a little bit low, but overall our park satisfaction rating was higher than most of the communities in the nation. How does that coincide? Because are our staff just working smart, working better? Is our population different? Because I can understand the potential call for more staff, but if the population is already satisfied, as the results have also shown, then I guess I maybe more of an observation.
Yep.
So
The staff are, I mean, people feel that there is a good, we'll kind of get into this. There's a good distribution of parks. There's a good offering of different park amenities. Some of the comments we did hear though, was that they could be better maintained. And there are a number of facilities that are beyond, even their kind of their useful life. And so there is some, improvements that need to be made within the facilities, but also in terms of maintenance as a whole. And we kind of get into that at the end too, with looking at kind of developing maintenance standards for the different facilities.
but I just want to point out that even later on, some of the studies show that the population is actually satisfied with the
Correct.
maintenance of the
You are
building
correct.
as well. So.
Okay. In terms of community engagement, so we started out the process having focus group meetings and public meetings. We listed out kind of all the different meeting attendees and focus groups there on the left-hand side. In general, some of the goals that were identified, and this is prior to before we went out with a statistically valid survey. The goals identified were completed and expanded and improved trails, improved maintenance of the current facilities, and increased opportunities for indoor recreation. Those were kind of the three keys that came out of the public input from the community. We then took that information to kind of tailor the questions that we asked as a part of the statistically valid survey, and developed that, which went out to residents within the community. So in terms of the statistically valid survey, this goes back to your question or comment, Mayor. How would you rate the overall quality of parks and facilities? Good to excellent was 81%, which is good. So people are happy with the overall quality of the parks and facilities that you have. And I'm not going to go through every single question just for sake of time, but I'm going to kind of get to another slide that kind of weights all of these together and develops a recommendation of priorities.
Our city manager has a question.
You may get to this, but can you talk just briefly on what statistically valid means? How many responses you needed to have and where that response rate was in relation to kind of what you see in other communities for these things?
Yep. So we had to get to, I believe it was 350 responses. So we needed to have 350 completed responses. And we had 421 households that responded, which is a very good response rate. And so then that allows us to have a precision of plus or minus 4.7 or 5% within these rankings. And so what's also nice is that, this is a survey that went out to, all areas of the community. So we have to have a certain response from different areas within the community and also, different demographics within the community. So it's not like, the entire softball association went out there and voted, 100 times, or, the soccer association. It's very specific to the different areas of the households to make sure we have a good cross section of the community. In terms of the services, that are offered. You know, what do you think needs the most attention within the community? Connectivity of trails and pathways was number one. Maintenance of parks and facilities was two. And amount of indoor recreation space was number three. And then from there, you can see it kind of really drops off then in terms of what the community felt needed the most attention in the next 5 years. Along with that question, then we asked, okay, what needs do you have? Then what are most important to you? And walking trails and paved bike trails were by far, number 1 and 2. And that is consistent, across a lot of different community surveys that we work with, is walking trails, bike trails are very high on everybody's list. Indoor running and walking, and then natural areas were 3 and 4 behind that.
Adam, did you have a question? Quick question for you, David.
Yeah.
Just because we've been having a lot of discussion on sidewalks here in Watertown.
Mhm.
It doesn't deal with sidewalks, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yep. Yes.
We're gonna talk about on the notations or the comments on the connectivity of trails and pathways. We have an area around our lake that has been long thought to get it completed. It's in the plan to be done in the next couple of years.
Mhm.
Do we know how much that segment of the bike trail and connectivity is weighted into that top?
No, it was more of general within the community, not a specific segment. We do address that later on in the recommendations that segment needs to be completed though.
Right. And then
Yes.
we don't know to what extent that may have come into play there.
Correct.
And I had the exact same question as Councilman Danforth. I'll wait for the end to ask more on that connectivity.
Okay.
I took the survey, that was not a breakout of that, so.
Right.
The people that may have responded to that might have been part of their response, just because there was no breakdown as to what portion or where
Right.
it's going to be. So
Right.
I would assume that probably
Yep.
has an impact one way or the other.
Right.
Since that's been on the agenda for 4 or 5 years pretty easily, so.
Okay. So 3 potential actions that are most important to you. Again, develop new trails, improve existing and indoor recreation. So you can sense kind of a trend that's starting. So we then take that information and weight everything based on, what do you think needs the most attention? What are some facilities where your needs are not being met? And what do you think is important? So those are kind of the 3 metrics that we look at and combine that into then this top priorities. Whereas if anything has a ranking of 100 or greater is considered a high priority. So high priority means those needs are not being met. People listed those amenities as not being met within the community. And they're most important to the community in terms of facilities in the future. So those high priorities, walking and hiking trails, paved bike trails, natural areas and habitat, indoor running and walking, indoor playground. Those are the top 5 as in the high priority. Medium priority then is 50 to 99. You can see that pickleball courts is pretty high on the medium priority. And then low priority means that, the needs are being met within the community for those different amenities. So you guys are doing a good job of, meeting those needs within the community. We also ask people, how do they, how do they get information about the park facilities? So how do you learn about offerings within the community? And then also, what inhibits you from utilizing parks and rec facilities? Too busy was number 1. Again, that's a very common response that we see. And then also, what are the preferred ways you learn about parks and rec facilities and what those offerings are? Top was Facebook, Parks website, department guide, radio. And so again, kind of web-based amenities, social media, those kind of the most ways that people hear about what's going on within the park facilities. Chapter 4 then gets into the park classifications. So doing an inventory and analysis of your existing park facilities. Following NRPA, there's a breakdown of different sizes and offerings of parks, which break you down into mini parks, which is 1.5 acres or less, a neighborhood park, which is probably 5 to 10 acres, a community park, which is kind of your larger park, larger service areas. And then you have sports complexes, special use parks, which don't kind of fit into any of those categories. And then open space, more kind of natural walking trails, natural areas that's designated as park space. And kind of you expect a different level of service within each of these areas as well. So mini parks, they're small, kind of a 1/4 mile service radius. There's no parking that's associated or offered with those parks. Same with neighborhood parks. Those are kind of more evenly distributed throughout the community. People walk there. There's not typically parking that's provided with those facilities, but with a neighborhood park, you start to see more, picnic shelters, playgrounds. You start to see some of those neighborhood type amenities that people have come to expect. Community parks are more of like your destination parks. So those service areas, can go, up to, a few miles. People will drive to those facilities. Same with the sports complexes and the special use. So that's kind of a breakdown of the different types of parks. And then we categorized all your parks into these different categories. So when we look at based on a category standpoint, so looking at, okay, do you guys have the correct distribution of mini parks, neighborhood parks, community parks? We kind of ranked you guys in regards to the level of service, kind of where the NRPR, kind of the national average is with these amenities. And then, so in terms of mini parks, there's a little bit of a deficit. Neighborhood parks, you guys have quite a bit more than that's needed. Community parks, a little bit of a deficit. But then when you kind of look at it in aggregate, you guys have a surplus of parkland. This doesn't account for kind of the other 500 plus acres of parkland that doesn't necessarily fit into, one of these categories. So this is kind of looking at more of the distribution of different types of parks within your community, not just large natural areas or large sports complexes. So, no, go ahead.
Make sure I'm clear in my own head.
Yeah.
That does not include any of the work the Park and Rec staff does with wellness center, outdoor pool, ice arena.
Correct.
Those are all in addition to this.
Correct.
As well as our premier softball complex.
Right.
Some of those sports complexes also are factored
into
that.
So this kind of takes your kind of special use items out of there and looks at it more in comparison with other communities. So then we looked at, okay, what's a good distribution of amenities? So when I say amenities, I'm talking about, small picnic shelters, large picnic shelters, pickleball courts, tennis courts, ball fields, soccer fields, playgrounds. So what are those different amenities within the park system, and how many do we usually see with different sizes of communities? So kind of in the middle there is the NRPA, kind of middle of the road. It's the median levels of service. So for example, in terms of, small shelters, typically, there's one site per 5,000 residents, give or take. You guys are at one site per, about 1,300 residents. And so you're exceeding the national standard by almost 400% in terms of the number of shelters that you guys have within your park system compared to the national average. And so we looked at that for small shelters, large shelters. Really where your needs exist would be youth baseball fields, and that looks at kind of fields that are specific to youth baseball, you know, with a turf infield, not kind of your multi-use, more softball fields. It's kind of your own specific youth baseball fields. Adult baseball in terms of one that fits, you know, Legion or high school, a need exists. And then I know you guys have the outdoor pool, but then looking at, okay, you know, if there's a splash pad specific area, which you guys now did just add kind of a little spray part with the downtown. Thank you. Sorry. So that now has, you know, a splash pad, kind of a splash area there. If it, one thing I want to point out is that we said that it meets standard unless we were at 150% plus. So essentially 50% over the national average. That is where we said, okay, beyond that, where we said it exceeds the standards. You can see there a lot of these different categories. You guys are kind of very high in the amount of offerings that you guys have to the community with amenities. So another item that we look at within inventory and analysis is the distribution of parks. And so we went and we looked at all of your different parks, and then we also look at kind of where they are within the community. And one of the things that we looked at as we kind of went through each of these parks, and also in our talkings with the public, our findings were, we kind of broke them out into 4 categories here. As you've seen throughout it, there's a good kind of wide distribution of parks within the community. And there's also a good distribution of amenities and recreational opportunities. The overall level of service is high for trails and parks. There's really only kind of 2 areas, kind of in the north central and south central areas, where you have some residential neighborhoods that are currently underserved, one of which is the River Ridge development. And as we've kind of already talked this evening, trail connections need to be completed, including the Lake Kempesca Loop. There's a question in regards to state and county land. So that is highlighted in yellow here, because that obviously plays into kind of the offerings around Lake Kempesca, kind of the south part of Pelican Lake there. So we included them on the map, but in terms of all of the data and acres, that's all just city property that we looked at there. So in terms of the distribution, we also looked at specifically the different amenities in all of the parks. So there's a table that I'm not going to go through. That's kind of on the back. You see that in the back image there. That's a part of the appendices. And then each park, we did a report for each park that lists where it is, shows an aerial image of it, and a couple of representative photos of amenities that are there, along with kind of listing out all of the different amenities that are in that park and the condition of them. We also have some kind of general notes about each of the parks as well. And so for all 37 parks, we have that attached as appendices at the back. And that really helps, you know, Dusty and his team understanding, okay, how many trash receptacles do we have? How many benches do we have? Where are they all located? And start to kind of pull all of that information together. So there's a good variety of parks throughout the community. There are some facilities that, you know, are very close to each other and could be repurposed. And there's a lot of duplications within the park in different areas that could be reduced. Most of the parks are well maintained. But a lot of them need amenity upgrades or improvements. There's a lot of amenities and elements that are at the end of their life cycle that really need to be improved. And at the end, when we get into recommendations, some of those don't need to be replaced because they're close to duplications in other park areas that are in good condition. And so, there's no sense in replacing something, adding it back new if you already have a newer amenity in close proximity to it. So we've identified some of those locations throughout the community as well. Chapter 5 then got into looking at the auditorium and the arena. The full report of that was put together by JLG Architects. Is in the document. I'm not going to go through that, but in general, the interior environment is poor. There's issues with kind of the exterior enclosure of the building as well. We worked with JLG on determining, okay, if we were to renovate the facility, if we were going to say, okay, we want to save the facility and reset kind of the life cycle costs of this building. Where are we at for that? And the estimate was between 11 and 13 million to renovate the existing facility to make it kind of usable and reset the life cycle of the building. As a part of the statistically valid survey, we asked people what they'd like to see done with the city auditorium. 28%, only 28% said that they think that it should be renovated. Other options included removing the facility for redevelopment, which was the highest percentage, so 52%. So over half the respondents said, it'd be best to redevelop this property, or get rid of the auditorium and redevelop it, whether that's for private development, whether that's for a new city hall. That the best thing was to get rid of the existing facility. Yes, sir.
Or is that response on here, when they made that response, did they know the estimated cost for a renovation?
No.
Okay, so it was just purely emotional.
Correct. Okay. We also looked then at the existing ice arena, which in general, again, the exterior enclosure was in poor condition. The exterior needs to be kind of reskinned, so to speak. The site around it has some poor drainage. There's a couple areas that it looks like it drains back towards the building. So that certainly doesn't help the structure and its longevity either. And the interior environment, it needs, new HVAC system, some interior improvements in order to utilize the facility. And so we went through and said, okay, if we want to rehabilitate this facility again, kind of reset the life cycle cost of the facility, you're looking at 4 to 5 million for the building. We asked the public the same question, no cost associated with it. 62% said they'd like to see the building utilized for public indoor recreation. And you've kind of seen that as we've gone through the results from different things. Indoor recreation was a high priority within the metrics. Other options that we asked people was in regards to a park maintenance shop or, have a private entity come in and utilize the facility, which were much smaller percentages. That 4 to 5 million, what we looked at with the facility.
Question over here.
Yeah.
I don't
Sorry.
remember. I think you said this before, but the indoor recreational space, it wasn't specified like how people want that to be used, correct?
Correct.
So that
Whether
could
it's,
be
a playground or synthetic
Sports
turf
facility.
or sports facility or pickleball,
completely undefined.
correct. So what we put together, that kind of led to that 4 to 5 million, in terms of a renovation is if we, basically kind of the west half of the building or the west kind of 3/4, was set up with synthetic turf. So it'd be a turf field house. You could fit kind of a U10 facility, U10 pitch on there with smaller fields kind of north-south. So you kind of see here, it's kind of a large kind of facility, breaks kind of all the way out to the edge. That would fit a U10 size soccer field in there. You turned it north-south, you could fit U8 size facilities in there. We looked at, there's the part of the facility that's kind of where like the locker rooms are, I guess, lean-to for lack of a better term on that north side. That would be removed. But we would need to have some more storage space associated with that, kind of improve the existing lobby, men's and women's restrooms, vestibule there. And then this space here on the east side is where you kind of have the overhead door that would come in there. We just labeled that as flexible space. We showed that as 2 pickleball courts that could fit in that area if it needed to be. So that was kind of the preliminary plan, so to speak, or concept plan that was developed for the field house, or that kind of led to that 4 to 5 million in costs. Adam?
Yeah, quick question for you.
Yeah.
You said that it's structurally the building is fine, it's just the overall aesthetics and
it needs new metal panels, the exterior, all the metal panels need to be replaced. HVAC system needs to be done new, but it's got good bones.
Yeah.
And it's in a good
building, correct?
Right, correct. And it's got good roof height to it. So, in terms of utilizing it for soccer, other ball facilities, it's a good facility. It's just, it's not set up for it right now. And so to get it to that level of quality to utilize it, that's kind of some of those costs that, and JLG had a recent project. I think it was White Bear Lake, where they had done something very similar to this. And so we kind of use that as a precedent from looking at images and also costs associated with what it would take to do that.
And I mean, currently it has in-floor refrigeration system for the ice arena.
Right.
But would we have to remove that? I mean, I was reading through
No.
So we could leave it in there and structurally be.
Yes.
Working.
Yep.
Any possibilities of utilizing that for a heating system?
I'd have to go back and ask them that.
That could be utilized as in-floor heat versus run a full new HVAC system.
I would have to ask them that. Good. I guess I didn't get that specifically from them. We can ask that.
And I'd also like to point out, I mean, it does have bathrooms in there and it does have a lobby. They're not
Right.
great, but
Right.
they are functional, and likewise it has
Correct.
storage.
Yep.
So adding this would be more of a want than a need for I'm just talking the storage and the lobby and the bathrooms. And the question that I would have is, while I applaud the concept, and I don't think that is all that dissimilar to what a lot of us would come up with in our own minds, but if the respondents were not specific regarding the sport or the activity that would be listed on the indoor playground, then why did you come up with the concept that you did, which is half and half based on age and pickleballs?
We looked at a couple different concepts, and we looked at an indoor playground as an option. But that comes with a lot more cost associated with it as well, just with the equipment and all that. This is probably the most cost-effective approach to renovating the facility. Again, like you said, it already has some of these amenities in there. So that necessarily wouldn't need to be done day one. But in order to we kind of looked at it as, again, kind of resetting, the life cycle costs of the building and the life of the building, what it would take to do that. And that's how we approached it. And that's kind of where we're at this level of study. If we want to look at it more specific and say, okay, what would be a phased approach to this, or, a more detailed estimate of, okay, we need to replace these specific amenities. We could certainly, look at that with JLG and kind of go through Dusty.
No, I appreciate it.
And to help answer that question, I guess, because I'm part of that and whatever. Again, knowing full well that we have not brought a group of people together to identify, who wants to use this facility and at what level and everything else. We just, for cost estimate purposes, it's like, we need to have something.
Sure.
To, you guys tell us what the cost of this would be. Obviously, we're going to put together a group to talk through what, that potentially could look like. And, that very well like change, but, that turf could be, not permanent, but, more of a roll-up system. Could accommodate a number of different uses.
David, do we have any kind of a line item estimate for like HVAC or?
Yes.
We do.
Mhm.
So
That's in the report.
David, earlier it was referenced that people wanted more walking and indoor track.
Mhm.
And then here we got pickleball courts.
Mhm.
We've got both of those at our wellness center. So are they
Right.
asking for something that they don't have to pay for?
Actually,
So that they don't have a membership that they gotta pay in order to partake in those? What are they asking for?
That, we didn't get that specific with the survey.
Because we do have,
So, right, yes, yes. And that's specifically why we didn't show, because we talked about, I mean, there is the possibility if you wanted to add like a second story walking track to this facility, you could do that. But you guys already have that. And so we were trying to look at what are some things that we could have in here, obviously other than the pickleball courts. But like, what are some, large expanses of turf is something that you guys don't have. And so we wanted to try and accommodate as much of that in this facility as possible to add something that's not already within the community. Okay. So,
One more.
Yeah.
What is the size you need for like an adult or like a high school soccer?
that needs to be, I think it's 210 by 340.
Okay.
I think is what it is.
Okay.
It varies. I'm trying to convert yards to feet quickly in my head, but it varies, but that's in generally about 70 yards wide by 110
Okay.
yards long. Generally where they're
I
at.
was just wondering because I didn't even know if it could fit that.
That would not fit in here.
Okay.
That's why we sized it as like a more of a youth site type
Okay.
fields could fit in there. And to be honest with you, we did, JLG also did like the Sanford Fieldhouse, which has a large, turf facility. You could play full-size soccer on there. It is never set up for that though.
It's all you.
It's always youth that utilize those facilities.
And the youth soccer fields are quite a bit smaller.
Right.
And you can utilize that for something else at the same time. I know I've been in there and it's their gymnastics on the side.
Right. I mean, my kids play soccer. We started practice last week. There was soccer on one half. There was baseball on a quarter. There was, football on like another small quarter or an eighth. And then there was, either gymnastics or cheerleading or dance or something that was happening in the other far corner. So, I mean, there's 4 or 5 different uses happening all at one time. But it's also sectioned off, throughout that facility as well. So
Is this planned with that, in that 4 to 5 with a divider type system,
with what?
like a divider?
Yeah, you would be able to incorporate dividers in this.
That's not factored in that $4 million.
That would be in the
Okay.
cost. Yes. Yep. And as Dusty said, I mean, depending upon, and this gets into, more details and specifics, but I mean, you could design a system where, the turf can be rolled up. You gotta have space to store that if you want to roll it up. And then you could have it for, different businesses to come in and have some sort of a, like a Pheasants Forever or whatever, some sort of, think of the word right now. Farm show or convention or something. So there, or you could design it where you have a different flooring system that goes over top of the turf. That allows you to drive, more equipment on top of it as well to set up for those types of shows. So those are specifics we didn't get into with this. This is kind of more of a higher level of here's what could be done.
Okay.
So we also looked at operations. So we met with, Dusty and his staff to kind of go through from an operations standpoint, some of the recommendations that came out of that. Again, kind of looking at, acres of parkland that Watertown maintains versus, the national average, trail miles versus the national average. and then staffing compared to the national average. So we exceed in the amount of amenities that need to be maintained, but we're kind of lacking, when it comes to staff to maintain those facilities. And so some of the recommendations, and again, that's kind of a full report in here, would be looking at adding staff, repurposing underutilized park facilities, looking at maintenance standards, doing a kind of a cyclical replacement program. So looking at, okay, we're going to replace, 2 to 3 playgrounds every year. And that way within, 20 years or 10 years, we're going to be able to replace our playgrounds, or looking at, the surfacing of tennis courts or basketball courts. So what are some of those cyclical items that, okay, we get into a maintenance schedule and replacement schedule to help maintain these facilities longer. So that kind of led to deferred maintenance and discussions and looking at that. We also looked at in the winter time, what can we do to kind of, limit some of the wintertime usage in those facilities to help with staff. So, maybe trash doesn't get emptied, in, all those bins are removed. And we only have a couple of trash locations throughout the trail system, or we only remove snow on part of the trail system. And then also looking at developing a volunteer program to kind of help with some of the shortages of staff that are currently there.
It's what pages? I can't find this. I mean, I'm sure that it's in
Page
my.
271.
270.
The agenda begins.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, that's what. 272, we're almost all 300 pages, so. Yeah.
If you go, they have this exact presentation.
Okay.
Well, some of the, it starts on page 60 in the report and goes through in kind of more detail, the per capita, the spending, staffing levels, structure. So again, it's a lot of information, trying to get through most of it here and leave some room for questions. So, okay. Action plan. So all of that information was utilized to develop the action plan, which we broke out into 9 different categories. And out of those 9 categories, there's sub bullets within each of the categories that are more specific. So in terms of the first one, trail system improvements and expansion. So looking at completing the Lake Kempesca Trail, implementing a trail systems restoration projects, and then kind of looking at a number of different spurs that would need to be completed. In terms of items that had a capital cost associated with them, we also utilized past projects that we've done and looked at and put in kind of a general, what is like per linear foot of trail cost. Now, obviously that can vary greatly between asphalt, concrete, whether you have to do a bridge, whether you have to do a lot of grading. So there's some variables there, but in general, we're at, a 10-foot wide trail is $250 a linear foot, give or take, depending upon the material and how much kind of base and grading needs to go with it.
Is that as asphalt?
No, that was concrete.
That's concrete.
Yep. So kind of the first overall one, trail system improvements. The second one, balance park maintenance resources with park assets. So that kind of addresses some of the operational items that we just had a slide on. I'm not going to go through and read all of these just for sake of time. That way, if you guys have some questions, we can certainly come back to these. But that has to do with more of the operation side of things. Reduce gaps in the park system service areas. So areas that, didn't have a park associated with them, like the River Ridge or the Stony Point, looking at those as, adding parks in those areas. And then also looking at, we took a look at the comp plan and what you guys have for park dedications. And then looking at, in the future, instead of, requiring the 5%, if it's in an area that is already within a service level area of a park or, covered by another park, maybe you look at more of cash option instead of the land donation option. So that would be something to look at there. And then also, look at partnering with the county.
And a quick question, have you looked at our policies on park dedication and?
Yeah.
They seem suitable with other communities or?
Yes. Yep. Also look at partnering with game fish and parks or the county. You get, as you kind of get to the south and west side of Pelican and Kempesca, you get into more county and state lands. So teaming with them to kind of connect trail systems and make better connections within the community. Increased access, number 4, increased accessibility throughout the park system. So that looked at kind of your playground surfacing. So gravel is not considered a safe playground surface or an accessible playground surface. So look at converting all those to either wood mulch or poured in place rubber surfacing or synthetic turf. Those are kind of the main 3 that we utilize. So we incorporated, $28 a square foot is your rubber, which is the higher cost. That includes doing a concrete pad underneath it as well. So looking at that, we also looked at, providing ADA accessible components within each of the parks and the playgrounds. And then also, molded bucket seats that are kind of more set up for larger kids or those with special needs, and incorporating those specifically at City Park. And then starting to look at some of your cyclical replacement of items throughout the park system. Item number 5 is improving the user experience throughout the park system. So what could we do to, either add some amenities or improve upon what's there? So again, looking at cyclical items, pickleball courts, which you guys will be talking about here in a little bit. Looking at providing Wi-Fi or, a kayak launch or, setting up a water course or water trail through the kind of the main heart of the city. Looking at, potentially another location for an additional splash pad that's, kind of outside of the core part of the city. Looking at synthetic turf soccer field or miracle baseball field. So these are some of what can we add to the park system that would serve the greater need of some of the input that we heard in our user groups, but then also throughout the survey. Along with adding is also repurposing some existing park facilities. So as you may or may not recall, so like natural areas was high on kind of the priorities list. Well, right now, from a maintenance standpoint, especially the parks along the river, a lot of them are mowed. But so that adds a lot of maintenance, but they can certainly be incorporated to more natural areas. And we've already started talking with Dusty and his team about that, converting no-mow areas, which help with some of recreating some of those more natural ecosystems, especially along the river. We also went through and looked at consolidating playgrounds. So we talked about that with Herzog Park. We also looked at consolidating, some of the sand volleyball court locations. So again, looking at what are some of the amenities that require more maintenance, and instead of having 1 or 2 distributed throughout the park system, let's consolidate that, put them all in one location. They're easier to maintain and they're more conducive to leagues and usage for those facilities. Then item number 7 got into awareness. So just what can we do to implement a new signage and wayfinding plan, both for the trail system and also throughout the different parks. There's a lot of different park signage throughout the system. So, making that standard, and incorporating that. We also talked, about how along the river corridor, kind of where different parks start and stop, is confusing. And so kind of reclassifying and renaming some of those parks in that area. And then also, 8 and 9 had to do specifically with the ice arena and the city auditorium, and some of the recommendations, and costs associated with those. There's then 7 appendices. So there's the mapping. So we kind of showed one map on here. There's 5 different maps that break it down into trails, parks with residential areas shown on there. There's the full statistically valid survey, all of the questions and the findings in there. There's the matrix, which is kind of the green Excel spreadsheet on the background. That's on there. Individual park inventory sheets, facility assessment, more detailed, it's kind of easier to read, the action plan in those areas, and then the maps. So it's coming up on my hour. It's a lot of information. It's a lot of reading. And if you guys have questions, certainly would entertain some questions.
The natural wildlife areas were not also broken down into what they would like to see, like Butterfly Park or,
Correct.
We are currently converting some of those areas already, like along Riverside, or along the river there, north of Riverside Park. That's gonna be natural areas. No more along the bike path that goes through there. So some of that's already being implemented.
Yep.
Question I have on that adult baseball, are we not looking at the stadium as adult baseball? Are you talking dedicated baseball fields?
We had that listed under.
It was listed in there, we just needed another one. You're talking about the action plan?
Yeah, to add
Where
an
did we have
adult
that in there?
style baseball field with.
It was the American Legion.
Yeah, the Legion was listed there as a high priority item.
I know what's in there.
Yep.
It's towards the end of your action plan.
So, and you talk about converting softball fields, are you talking about in the local parks or?
5.12.
There it is, yeah. So in terms of the adult, so we looked at, the recommendation was to look at Premier Softball Complex, just because in talking with staff that there's, not all of the fields are utilized all the time out at the Premier Softball Complex. And so our recommendation was to look at that or Foundation Park as potentially a way to incorporate a larger Legion or high school sized field. Personally, I think the Premier Softball Complex is probably your best bet. It's got the most room available to it. Right, yeah, and the foundation, is just with the clearances around the airport and such, like you wouldn't be able to light that very well.
And there is space to the west towards the airport grounds, but never utilized as a bigger.
You won't be able to light it. It won't be, if you would do it, it
Wouldn't
would.
have any restrictions.
Yep. So, but we did look at, we also looked at, you saw in here at the Coke Complex, replacing lights there. So that was right after that one, 5.13.
Did you guys have any research, having discussions about completely divesting of parkland? So saying we don't want this park anymore, would like to put it up to a public vote to get rid of it, sell it for development. Was that part of any of the discussions? Did it come up at all? I'm not advocating for that.
Yeah.
Curiosity.
No, we did not, we didn't hear that from anybody in terms of we need to get rid of parkland. I think that there's ways that can help with, the reducing the maintenance of those and Dusty and his team are already starting to do that. I would not advocate for removing or eliminating parkland just because it's such a great amenity for the community. And yes, you have a lot of it, but there are certainly, more communities are more often than not very short on parkland. And so to me, I would consider that, certainly an attraction to your community is that you have all of those amenities available to anybody that would want to move here.
What research was done? I know that our Park and Rec director has expressed this to me before, and I'm in favor of it, and you've discussed this, but let's say the parks down by the river.
Mm-hmm.
Don't have to mow all of them.
Right.
All the time.
Correct.
That's a very large tract of land. But if we start doing that at several of these properties or go into more low maintenance mode, then obviously that would also decrease the number of employees that are probably going to be recommended.
Right. So then you'd look at reducing what is considered your kind of like developed park area and eliminating some of those natural areas. As you eliminate those kind of higher maintenance areas, you can reduce that, acres per 1,000 residents. And I think that would be, and it doesn't have to be, the river is a great example just because, that's kind of that's an easy win, let's just say. But there are certainly, other areas that don't necessarily have to be within the floodplain or the floodway that you can start to incorporate butterfly gardens or other types of amenities like that. That would, we saw was something that people wanted, but it also helps ease your burden of maintenance. You're kind of killing two birds with one stone, so to speak.
And can I add, those staffing numbers were directly correlated with the population, not with the acres. We just had them there side by side so you could see that they really should affect one another, but the staffing numbers were just directly on the population.
I do have a question about the staffing numbers. Did that account for our entire Park and Rec staff or just staff that's associated with park maintenance, facility operations?
In the later part of that, the NRPA number utilizes parks, recreation, and aquatics. So that was the basis for how that was calculated. And then if you read through the NRPA report, approximately 49% of that total is typically dedicated to park maintenance. So basically you could take the overall number, excuse me, and take 49% of that, which then gives you the park maintenance staff number.
Are we at that 49%?
We are, our staffing level is essentially similar to the national average. The challenge is the additional number of acres. So, let's say our staffing level is approximately the equivalent to the national average for a community our size. But a community our size typically doesn't have 3 times the amount of space. So we're staffed appropriately if we had less acres. Essentially.
That's good. I had a question for you. When all this was put together, Park and Rec Department used to have to maintain river downs, correct?
Mm-hmm.
For those, now the police store is gonna take care of the grounds there?
They will take care of some of the grounds. There's still, acres that we will.
No, it's only a partial.
It's partial.
But was that taken into consideration when the numbers were?
I think some of these numbers they're just base numbers.
You got a good idea in the back of your mind, what?
Yeah.
I've got to ask about it. Oh, sorry.
No,
I've got to ask about it because a lot of people know that I'm a champion to try to find a downtown dog park.
Mm-hmm.
I see the numbers in here for 750,000 to $1.5 million.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not looking at a Taj Mahal dog park. I'm literally just talking about a fence.
Yeah, and you can do that.
A fence doesn't cost $750,000.
Well, no, a lot of times, so that assumes synthetic turf.
Oh, okay.
So a lot of times, so with dog parks, you usually want to have, if it's a mowed turf application, you want to be able to kind of rest areas because it just gets chewed up so bad from its use. And with a downtown dog park, you're usually at, your small areas, so you don't have the space to kind of rest other areas. And so the turf, if you're to try and mow it and irrigate it, it just gets beat up very quickly. And so, in these types of settings, we typically assume synthetic turf.
Okay.
No, that didn't include land acquisition. No, because we looked at, that could happen at, Lori's Garden or,
Right next door.
yeah, correct. Yes.
Okay.
David, I had a question.
Yeah.
Did we look at utilization for the individual parks? Kind of find out what kind of use they're getting? And the amenities, what type of use the amenities are getting?
The survey did address, one of the first questions on that survey.
Yeah.
Which park, which park areas are you using the most? That was skewed a little bit because most respondents, you've got Bramble Park in there. Well, most people are thinking Bramble Park too.
Right,
And you've got the zoo and you've got the associated parkland. So, but in general, you can kind of get a gauge, City Park, out by the lake was one of the highest ones in there. So besides the, maybe the Bramble Park, statistic, most of those give you an idea of usage.
And I know that more of an observation, but I remember hearing Councilman Danforth saying this quite a time ago, and I've always agreed with it, that the parks that get used are the ones with the special purpose there. Whether that be Frisbee golf, Bramble Park, because people, dog park, and even City Park. When I looked at it, and I think City Park is fantastic, but I wonder if you would have had that enormous participation rate if it weren't for Cooking on Compesca and if it weren't for some of the other activities that drive people out there. So at the same time as looking at functionality, like what is offered at specific locations, whether that be Frisbee golf or, a particular amenity, programming is also something. And I don't think that all has to be handled by Park and Rec, because obviously, like Cooking on Compesca is an example where that's a chamber function at a Park and Rec facility, but their numbers were 10,000 participants.
Similar to the Optimist Club, you've got Winter Wonderland.
Yeah.
How many people are going through that park?
Yeah.
A lot of people go to use the beach, but not necessarily the park.
Well, and that's what I wonder is, it's interesting to just note that. And obviously Foundation Plaza has a huge participation rate in large part because of Thursday Night Live, but there's also, you can see the kids who use it. Anyway, just making a note of that.
There was the question that Dusty's referencing asked, they could make multiple selections, so it wasn't just which park do you use the most, you could select a bunch of them. But City Park, Stokes Thomas Lake City Park was the highest. Bramble Park was second. Foundation Park was third. Those were all 40% and above. After that, it dropped down to 25%, which is Highland Park, and then it all kind of incrementally, goes down to, I think it's probably more telling on this as to which parks are not visited or utilized. So like at the very bottom is Hampton Park, Sioux Park, Mallard Cove Park, Herzog Park. All of those are under 2% of respondents utilize those facilities. And some of those are facilities that we said also are in close proximity to others. And so do you really need to improve them? Probably not, especially when you compare it to not heavily utilized.
And also this doesn't take into consideration amenities or, let's say, playground equipment that is offered by our schools.
Correct.
Okay. Park and Rec Board?
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Are you sticking around for the pickleball discussion or are you leaving?
No, I kind of wanted to hear the pickleball.
All right, thank you very much. All right. We're moving on to the pickleball complex project update. Director.
I don't know. Gotta go.
Okay, see you later.
Pickleball? Yeah. What, Parky? Probably back.
Attached to the agenda, is that what you're looking?
Yeah. Not that I really need anything up there, but if there's any documentation,
It's always good to give people something.
right,
Besides you.
besides me. Just got it. Sure. While he's figuring that out, just want to take an opportunity to give you guys an update on the process. We've got some members of the Pickleball Association here. And really, since I've got here, we've kind of been working on this, getting design, what have you. We're to a point, putting a fundraising plan together. We're to a point where we're getting really close. So essentially where we're at now is, I'll just see if I need it. Yeah, here, tell you what, move it forward a couple of slides. Just click up ahead. You should be able to. Okay, which the arrows? Yes.
Let's do the king of technology.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not working.
Still got to try and get a flip.
Okay, there, that's a good picture. We've had, several conversations with the Pickleball Association to, figure out a location and things like that. So we kind of landed on, if this is up at the Wellness Center. So if you're looking, here's the edge of the Wellness Center. There's the kind of the slide sticking out, whatever. This is that east parking lot. And this is this ground over here. Ultimately, there may be a street that goes through there, but that's sited properly for proper clearances and everything else. The group, together, we kind of went through this. You'd have your 6 courts to the north, and then a plaza area right in between here that would be concrete. Have a shade structure, and then you've got 2 courts there. Would work out really well if you have a tournament or something, and you get into your finals. This is where you have your championship matches and what have you. So when I got here, the Pickleball Association had requested a cost estimate from Mammoth Construction. So I already had kind of an established relationship with them. So we, through the process, it's like, okay, they gave us a cost estimate of roughly $850,000 for this project. Which would include everything, the nets and everything that goes with that. A couple of things that aren't included in, weren't included in that was, drinking fountain, lights, things like that. As a group, when we were designing this, so we would like to maybe stub in the utilities for some of those, but the main goal is to get some courts built. Throughout that process, we engaged Mammoth for the design, very attractive design cost. And as a part of that, they put together, and you'll see in your packets, a proposal project proposal. Obviously, none of that has been approved or anything, for $837,480. So that's kind of where we are today, or at least as of last Wednesday, when I put this together. We do have some new information. The Pickleball Association has done a great job, getting out there and trying to raise funds for this. Of that 850, in the 24 CIP budget, the city has committed $450,000 to this project. Pickleball Association was going to raise the balance. And I don't recall the figures off the top of my head, but to date, they have roughly 200 and some odd thousand in liquid assets. And kind of where we were at is we might, in order for this project to go forward, we felt like, we needed to have the full commitment. So they were looking at bridge financing. Last Friday, unfortunately, Jolette's not here. I've been working with, Jolette regularly on this project. She sends me an email. We've got a bank that has agreed to do some of the bridge financing to get us to the number we need to, if we were to go forward with the Mammoth proposal. So that was on Friday. So that's why that's not in that information. And over the weekend, I going through Facebook or whatever, I noticed Brookings is starting their pickleball court project. I'm just curious. I'm like, wonder what kind of prices they got. They got attractive prices. I'm going to say more attractive than what is in the proposal that we have in front of us on here. So, again, we're looking for direction through this conversation. I have my own thoughts, but again, there's information in there, the Mammoth process. They're through a cooperative purchasing agency similar to a Sourcewell that vets contractors for doing projects and things like that. And that's all legal and by the book and everything else. That's kind of the process we have been going down with this. But I'm wondering if that's the direction we want to continue to go. Yes.
So just to clarify this, we even have a bid from Mammoth or just a projected bid?
It is a proposal or a construction,
Proposal,
yeah.
okay.
That there, I think is a 20-page document in there. It's a contract to build it
Okay.
through the cooperative purchasing, route. Yes, sir.
When was that put together?
When?
Yep.
2 months ago, something like that.
No contract has been signed or anything like that?
No.
Okay.
No contract has been signed. Yes.
Do we owe anything to Mammoth?
We brought them on board for the engineering. So I believe we paid
No outstanding invoice.
that part of it. So,
Councilman Tupper.
Who is Brookings using
for what?
their construction of their?
I got the bid tabs. I haven't gone through it
But
or,
it's not Mammoth though.
no.
Okay.
It is not.
Councilman Bueller.
Thank you. If we rebid, and my assumption is here, we're looking at bid it out, obviously. What would that do for the timeline for starting this project? Where would we be?
Part of it would depend on who is a successful bidder. And their current workload and timeline. I know at least one of the bidders for the Brookings project that has some work in Watertown this year. So they would already be in town and whatever, if they were the successful bidder. And we could stipulate, in the bid when we would like, construction to begin and, a completion date.
You know how many bids they got?
Do I have that up here? 6.
So the one thing, because we all just kind of learned about this today and over the weekend, that we need to do internally is compare kind of what's been proposed and planned here with what's actually been bid in Brookings to make sure that it's an apples to apples comparison. And that the end product is what we need the end product to be. So it could very well be advantageous to go to the bid process versus using the cooperative purchasing agreement. But we just don't know the details of that yet.
But the end, I'm sorry, man, we have the engineering, so.
Yeah.
That's gonna be the scope of work for.
Yep.
This bid.
So
Yeah.
city manager and director. We're taking no action today, but
Right.
I would think getting the impression in a very quick conversation with Director Rodick and I think I will just speak for myself. I would like to at least find out some more information upon the Brookings thing. Obviously, we want to move expeditiously upon this. But I think that we,
Well, the engineering division has been involved pretty heavily on the front end with Racket as well.
Yeah.
So.
Through the design process and whatever, the engineering division has been part of those discussions.
Whether it be the cooperative purchasing or. I don't need to be involved in those discussions with engineering and Parks and Rec, and they'll
Right.
let me know what
And,
their recommendation is.
and to just kind of, at a high level, you mentioned the scope of work. I do know the Brookings, it's laid out differently. Their original plan was 8 courts, just kind of in a box. And they didn't have a larger, I'm gonna say, player area, plaza area. And just quick conversation today, they decided they wanted that, and they're gonna, they're actually in the process of looking at doing a change order to the bid they got to add a plaza area. So the scope is gonna be similar, I would assume, but I do need to do the homework on that.
Dusty, do you know, I know you didn't have a chance to go through it all. Did they look at like a water and lighting system,
Who's that?
Brookings on their?
I don't know. I said, I drew the original footprint and plan for that before I left. I do know that there was some water, but there was drinking fountains close to that. So I don't know that that was part of I know lighting was not part of it. So.
I would just say, since we have a quorum on the park board side, do you need anything from us to not slow this down on our side of it? No? Okay.
I don't think.
I just wanted to make sure that I didn't get in your way.
No, I don't.
Councilman Tucker,
No, I don't. Okay.
I'm itching.
Councilman Danforth.
But it seems like, which this doesn't surprise me actually, but the contractor market is certainly changing out there from where it was even 6 months ago, or certainly a year or more ago. It seems like the most responsible position we should take is to actually get it bid. Let's see what the market's telling us it is. That delays things a little bit, but that's the prudent and responsible way for us to move forward.
Councilman Bueller.
Dusty, were you gonna address the bridge financing issue?
The bridge financing, got word from Jolette that, there was the opportunity for bridge finance. Depending on how these bids would come back, we may need, the Pickleball Association may need to exercise that. Because if these bids were to come in between the city dollars that are already allocated and the funds that the Pickleball Association already has, it could potentially, we could go ahead with the project without that bridge financing. Even if we are not adding the stubs for the lighting or do the drinking fountain right now, that additional money that is pledged for this project could be used to add those amenities into the future.
Good point, just one more quick. If we do the lighting, once we've got the engineering, once we get the bids, do we separate out the stubbing in for lights from the total cost of putting lights in all together? In other words, if they put the groundwork in, what's that gonna cost, and what would it cost to just go put?
Yeah, I mean,
the lights in?
I guess moving forward, my recommendation is let's at least, get things stubbed in to the locations. And leave enough room for appropriate footings and everything else. Get this done. And then, depending on where funding's at and what have you, then we could bid the lights completely separate. That would be just a completely separate lighting project for the pickleball courts.
Good.
Okay, before I go to Councilman Danforth, just real quick, are you looking at stubbing out and or lighting all of those courts or just some of them?
Well, I think the way you would like that would just be around your perimeters, you know, on your 6th court and probably your 2. You know, you could do a conversation, but.
Dan, for
In regard to the shortfall as it exists today, assuming it's 850 grand, right? I thought I heard last week that the pickleball association is about $104,000 short. They've got commitments to that,
Correct.
pledges, but that those funds wouldn't be available till about July. Is that correct?
I'm not sure I follow you.
2 more years,
2 more years?
up to 2 more years for some of them, based on what we saw at the last part for me.
Okay, I could have swore somebody had told me that it was in July. That those were gonna come in.
Bless you.
Director Von Corey.
I'm just gonna talk quickly because timing is of the essence here. From the engineering standpoint, Justin Peterson was online. Looks like he might have logged off, but he's been helping Dusty with this and the consultant. Essentially, the time it would take to compare the Brookings bid to what we've got going here shouldn't take that long. There are a couple of unique things to ours, like you already talked about, the utilities, the water, the electric, that they may or may not have in the Brookings bid. The other big one that comes to my mind is the grading. You know, Brookings might be going in on a piece of land as flat as a stable. And here we've got quite a bit of cut to do to accomplish these courts. There might be 100 or 200 grand over grading this project if they don't have it in theirs. But trying to discern those comparisons. The only thing that will take a little bit of time is to create the upfront documents, they're called the front end documents for the bid. If we go out to bid, you got the plan sheets, but we don't have front end documents. We weren't going to need them if we went with Mammoth. So that's something we would have to create internally in the engineering division. Doesn't take a substantial amount of time, but to everybody's points about the timeline, I just wanted to point that out. Could be a little bit of labor, nothing extreme.
You had something?
Right. If they're done, I was just gonna ask them, the amount the city committed is already in the capital improvement plan.
Yes.
So the variable will be to the pickleball association. So we're looking at. Correct?
Pardon me?
The difference in the price would be to the pickleball association.
Right.
Then, I mean, we can always bid out with alternatives for water, just and things like that. I mean, it's not.
Yeah, or again, let's, you know, get the main project done and, you know, the pledges that will be coming due could, you know, fund some of those other ones if the pricing was close to address the grading. I know they were doing like 4 foot of soil amendment under the Brookings one, I heard, which was going to be very expensive, which we would likely not have to do that for this project. So
You could even conceivably be in a better position than what Brookings might be conceived.
we usually are.
You don't have to tell me.
Didn't you used to work?
But I never moved there. I lived here.
Councilman Tupper.
No, it's pretty flat.
It's really flat.
It's good space.
Councilman Tupper.
My question is, when you're talking about the bridge funding, are you talking about their whole 400,000?
No, it's just
Short.
Mm-hmm.
and I don't recall the number.
Right, the number when you talked about was 104,000, we've now got it down to 82,000, and we have a signed commitment from a bank that when we need the money, we can have the money. It's being secured by a member with a CD. So we have to.
So my question is, and so then a good share of that is pledge dollars, right? Over.
I've got over 200,000 in cash in the bank.
Okay, so.
Yeah, they have it, Randy, they have it pledged. It's just, it's on a time. So
Over 5.
up to 5 years.
So what my question is, how do we pay for it in the meantime?
That's
The bank,
So that's, the whole bridge loan is for that whole amount, whatever you. Okay.
Yep.
That answers,
Between now and July 1, I'll have it.
that answers my question.
And that might be the July number that,
I think I would. Actually, council, correct me if I'm wrong. We're all in favor of going forward. We would all appreciate more information, just to find out a little bit more about Brookings. And then we're all in favor of moving fast on this. A lot of work has already been done. I think everyone would like to see it done this year, so I think it would be great. I think that we have a great plan in place if we decide to go forward with what we have, but obviously, on behalf of the taxpayers of Watertown, we need to find out what Brookings is getting for their money because we might be in a good position to potentially get the same facility for less, and then we solve a lot of our problems.
Let's ask the elephant in the room, what's the difference between the Watertown and what Brookings just accepted?
Again, without, yeah.
That's what we need to find out.
No, I get that, but what was Brookings accepted bid?
Oh, how much was the bid
Yeah.
that they awarded? Oh, yeah.
I don't know if they did all the schedules or what have you, but it was, I think right around 450.
So it could conceivably be less expensive.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if we're speaker.
I'll give leeway, yeah.
Thank you. This morning, we had 7 courts going up at the London Center. We think as a pickleball association, we get courts up there, get them visible, give people an opportunity to learn. They're gonna be many, I mean, those 8 courts are gonna be utilized a lot. We think it's amazing. If you go other places in the country, they're building courts all over the place.
On the rise.
I think we're all in favor.
You know, I'm saying, I mean, it's.
So you were basically telling me to sit down and shut up.
I'm kidding you. No, I think we're all in favor of it.
Yep.
I just saying that.
Yeah, Councilman Beeler?
Just a comment, a lot of big kudos to the Watertown Pickleball Association for taking this step with us and trying to make it happen. I know there's been a lot of work behind the scenes. Some dedicated folks and a lot of money for doing this project, so big thanks to them.
Yeah. Lots of good work. It's a great example.
I'll sit down.
Councilman Shetty?
Like that, or we'd have to do a lot of dirt work.
Right, yeah. You start getting into more change of grade.
You do own quite a bit of land north of that though.
Yeah, we do.
I have a question.
Councilman Jerry?
How many people would have played the last 2 days in the throw?
How many?
Just kidding.
That one, she would have.
I didn't even go fishing a couple of days, so.
And just want to point out, if someone doesn't know, it's Jolette Kosher, not Jolette. I actually, when you first said it, because Joel is a big
Yeah.
pickleball player too. I just wanted to make that clear that Jolette is
Two different.
she's more intimately involved with the fundraising capacity. In fact, I don't even actually know. I can't say that someone is not. I just know that Jolette and
Oh,
several.
Joel is also in.
Yeah.
Promoting.
Okay.
Just a comment, she's been in businesses multiple times. Yeah, really worked hard.
Park Board, before I let you go, I'd like to point out to everyone that Nash Kohlberg, the youngest guy on the Park and Rec Board, is giving up time on his 21st birthday. To come and talk about our park. So thank you very much.
On to record, the bar is open.
But you are in PD, so be careful, you don't end up.
Cake and donut would have been.
Like great school. So happy birthday, Nash. Thank you for being here. Park Board, you're most welcome to stick around, but you're also welcome to leave if you would like.
But
Nobody's saying.
Same as a really important basketball game starting shortly.
yeah, 8 o'clock.
Good point.
All right.
No, that was last night.
I went.
All right, we will go on to the presentation on agenda procedures. City Manager Mack.
Oh, thanks, Mayor. So I will be quick. But I wanted to share with you all, there's nothing you need to do with this. And after the meeting, you will have viewing access to it. Pete will send out a link to all of you, but we've been working internally as a leadership team over the last couple of months to just try and streamline our own agenda process and focusing on all the items that are coming through. We have some departments like Public Works who have a majority of the items that come through to council. We have some like the library who only have 1 or 2 items a year. And so there were a couple of points that we were really trying to focus on. One was making sure that everyone has the ability and the wherewithal to submit agenda items for council meetings in a unified, uniform way. And I'll get into that here in just a few minutes. Secondly, we wanted to be able to be more future looking with, what's coming down the pipeline for council agendas. We had approached you all back in January about adding a second work session. You all said, we don't think that's necessary. So we have built in, and I'll show you here in a minute, a way to kind of accomplish sharing some information. So what we've done is, we've built out this grid for the entire year, and it covers all of the council meetings, all of the scheduled work sessions, and then either the 4th or in the 4 months out of the year that there's 5 Mondays, the 4th or the 5th Monday is what we are considering just a virtual work session. So that Monday, you'll get what we call the read ahead for the next council meeting. And there's a read ahead on the agenda for today. So this was the April 1st meeting. You'll see everything that was on that agenda, where under the headings, the department that has requested it. We have also moved up our internal process so that everything flows through the finance office so that agendas can be posted by the Thursday prior to a work session or council meeting rather than Friday. So we've shifted from a department head perspective, we've shifted everything. The individual departments are also going to have to do some shifting of their own work cycle and work process. But Pete, if you scroll down, so here is the work session for today. As you see, all of the items that we're going to discuss as a body. We did put in some time limits, if you will, just for our own, like, we think this might take an hour. We think it might take 15 minutes. It could take less, could take more, just sort of for our own information. And then you'll see that middle column. So information only, like this, we're just sharing. This is what we're doing, trying to improve our processes so we can make sure we're getting good information to you all in a timely manner to make informed decisions. Move forward for action. So the park plan, you'll see that on the agenda next Monday for consideration for approval. And then we have direction requested. So pickleball, I think we got some clear direction, keep moving forward. Whether we bid it or we do the cooperative purchasing, we'll bring to you whatever needs to be approved in an expeditious manner. And then we have the look ahead. And so here are all of the items that we intend to have on the April 15th agenda. So it also is requiring us to be kind of 2 weeks ahead of the meeting cycle by the time we're submitting everything. You'll notice that there are a couple of points on here with asterisks, meaning they are coming at some point. We thought maybe they would be ready by the 15th, but they might not be. And so the point of the look ahead is, one, to give you guys an opportunity to see in real time what's coming, the next week. It also gives you an opportunity in these work sessions to pull something out, like, hey, I want to talk a little bit more about the police vehicle and trade-in. And that's why we're all here. That's why all the department heads are here. So if there's something that you want to pull off and have a discussion here or in the week leading up to the council meeting, if you've got additional questions or you want to dive a little deeper into that topic, we can be prepared to do that for you all. So that is the grid. You want to go down to the 15th. So we just started working on it in our department head meeting today, making sure that we had not only everything that's happening at this meeting has carried over to the April 15th meeting, but we'll be adding items as we go for the end of the month virtual work session. There's mud. I don't know that I covered everything that we talked about at our department head meeting today. But if you can go, you can go all the way out. We've built in, the budget budget hearings, we've built in, things that we know are coming that we do on an annual or a regular basis. So it's really helping us delineate our work in a more productive way, because I've shared with my team, I think we collectively at some points think of agenda items as just something to check off the list. It's the end product of a lot of the work that goes on behind the scenes. But in reality, it's probably one of the most important things that we do, because it's our job to make sure you all have the information you need to make informed decisions, whatever the decisions are. So we're kind of backing up and using the agenda item as the starting point and building from there.
So can I ask a question? How does this appear online? It's gonna be under the same minutes section?
No, so Pete's gonna send you a link. So this is set up in SharePoint. It's just internal. This is not available to the public. And you can't go in and change anything. Cause I know you'll try and you'll mess it up and. No, you'll have viewing access, just so you can see. Pete's right here.
$5.
Yeah, so say that again.
I said the internet caps over there, but I do have a comment.
Yep.
I want to thank you guys, all the hard work and dedication you guys put into this, because one of the most common things we hear sometimes at council meetings is we didn't have enough time to look over the information. I think this is going to get us the information that we need. If we do have a question ahead of time, it's going to give us the time to address that question. But all the work and dedication you and your staff put into it, we have to take that time to utilize it also, because it's just worthless if we don't do anything with it. So
it's been kind of fun. I mean, if this is your kind of fun, I guess, but we have spent, some pretty significant time since, Carter, if you remember from the council staff retreat back in November, shared that they do something similar in Gillette. And they have another system that they use to track projects, and we just haven't gotten there yet. So,
And
yeah.
what was Carter's last name?
Napier?
Napier. So I will applaud City Manager Mack and her team, because I also saw them working on this at their retreat. But this was something that I know Councilman Tupper and I have talked with City Manager Mack about getting this implemented, because I know that several of us were impressed with that system that Carter had showed us at the street planning in November. And then I did also ask about there were several of us who like the functionality where you can click on a topic and see what information is already there, so you can educate yourself and start tracking it ahead of time. So, and that is something that they'll work on, but this is a very good step.
Anything, you guys have anything to add? Yeah.
I don't know if you mentioned it or not. Did you mention each tab on the bottom? Every month of the year is all spelled out already?
I didn't specifically mention it, but every month of the year is down there at the bottom.
Yeah, I knew Bruce is gonna be transferring.
Right. Where's October? Let's see. So just, I don't know, just information sharing, but we have council meetings typically on Mondays, unless there's a Monday holiday. And then as a department head team, we meet every Tuesday. And so what we have started doing for the last couple of weeks is really tying those department head meetings to this. We do spend time making sure that for the next upcoming meeting, it's built out, it's got all the information. And then the appropriate staff from each department take what's in the grid and develop the actual agenda items that you all see when you get to a work session or a council meeting. So the attachments, the background, all of that. And we can switch over to the guidebook now if you want. So this next thing, it is a work in progress. I don't want to give you the copies we have because they are going to change slightly. And again, there's not much for you all to do with it. It's just for information sharing. But we have also spent some pretty significant time talking about workflow, the formatting of the agenda items, making sure that every department that is submitting information is doing it in a uniform way. You could scroll down just a little bit. And it's for staff use. So any staff that are preparing items in any kind of capacity. So we have a lot of office specialists, exec assistants, division managers, who often are the first ones just to initiate an agenda item, and then it'll go to their department head for approval. From the department head, it goes to finance to just kind of compile everything. From finance, it goes to Kelly, our new PIO, to look at it from a public viewing perspective. Are we missing attachments? Do the maps make sense? Spelling, grammar, all of that. And then the final approval comes to me. So I review the entire agenda by the Thursday, and then it gets published. And Jennifer in finance is the one who publishes all of that. So here's where we kind of just talk about the different things that should be included in the agenda cover sheet. We've got some sample language in here. If you want to go back to the timeline. So we've also mapped out, yep, that one. And this will look different because this shows that materials are due on the Tuesdays. We actually decided they were due on Wednesdays, but here's the council meeting date. Here's when the agenda will be published by. Here's when all of the materials are due. And we have set the expectation that barring any extenuating circumstances, if your stuff's not in, it's not going on the agenda. Because we don't want to submit things to you all that are not fully vetted and prepared. And then work sessions. And again, we're going to go through and add that 4th or 5th Monday. It'll likely have an asterisk that's just those are just read aheads. So here's what's coming on the next council meeting. And then here's a template. So iCompass is our agenda software that we use that has built-in templates. But further into the guidebook, it talks, oh gosh, what do you do with this? But it goes into each heading and gives a lot of really great sort of examples. So like the background and analysis. So it's a summary of the issue that introduces the change that's requested. It should have the background analysis, any previous council, commission, or board actions that are related to that item, how it ties to any council goals. So whether that's through your strategic plan, the comprehensive use plan, master transportation plan, park master plan that we just discussed. And then any communication efforts. So what have we, it requires a public hearing. So we sent out notification as required by state statute on this date to the affected property owners. Let's see here. And then you get into, was there any interdepartmental coordination? So pickleball is a great example. Lots of coordination between Public Works and Park and Rec on that. So discuss that a little bit. How about other agencies or boards? We often do work with county and the state, plan commission, park board. So giving some synopsis of the work that has gone into it until it gets to you all. Council goals, again, we talked about that. And then financial considerations. So, what is the cost of the project? How will the funding be allotted? Specify where the project is funded from the budgeted revenue, use of revenues, and then specify the specific fund that applies to whatever the item is. It's coming in front of you all. And then, so the oversight and project responsibility, we haven't really done currently. We list the staff reference, but this just kind of gives a little bit more information. So once you all have taken action, here are the people who are responsible for carrying out that action. And then any attachments like we currently do. So, and then the document itself, once it is finished, will have templates and those kinds of things for staff to reference. So that's what we've been working on. I'm very excited about it. It's been a little bit of a labor of love just to get everything coordinated. But I'm very, I'm looking forward to when we're in full rotation of this. And I know that our staff is also looking forward to the regimen.
Like the uniformity.
Yeah, uniformity of it, we'll have a routine, a system, it's everyone's operating from the same playbook. Our vision, mission and values there. And then, again, just going back to the agenda items are one of the most important things that we as staff do. And they need to be treated that way, not as just another thing to check off the list. So.
Gives a lot more uniformity. All the
Yep,
departments.
cross departments. Like I said, we have some departments that regularly have items in front of you all and are pretty good at hitting the key points. And then we have some that may only have an item once or twice a year. And so it's a good resource for everyone. And as we cycle people in and out, having this as an onboarding and training document is pretty important as well. So. That's all I got. I told you I'd keep it brief, but I just wanted to share with you the work that we've been doing.
And I might have missed it, but how does it work for the council to put something on the agenda? Council members. What's our policy going to be there?
Well, in order for you to add something to the agenda, you're supposed to get two of you to take a vote on it.
Is that somewhere written in a policy and ordinance?
I think it's ordinance, yeah. And it may be in your governance policies.
Yeah, it might actually even be in HRC.
Under council
Yeah.
section.
Yeah, that Title VII.
It's in there?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so, yeah.
So any two people, just Bruce says, hey, Liz. And they both say, yep.
Yep.
But now one question on top of that though.
Yeah, right.
So let's say in between council meetings. So let's say Bruce wants something on there. And Lynn stand behind him, do they just email you with that information or does that come up during a meeting?
I would say-
On future.
I would say no, because you've got your governance policy that says direction has to be by a majority of you. And so, even if you don't like the topic, if 4 of you say, yeah, put it on the agenda, then staff can go, not only put it on the agenda, but prepare for that item.
So it'd be more requests during a council meeting,
Yeah.
put it on future council. So
And then how much time do you need for us to do that? How soon do you have to have it before the council?
Well, you can do it during other business.
I mean, so it's on the agenda. If we want to add something to the agenda, how soon do you need it before you can?
For you, I'll make all exceptions. Well, we are requiring staff to have all of their stuff in by the Wednesday before the council meeting at noon. What are you wanting to add to the agenda, Bruce?
Nothing.
But
Go ahead.
for clarification purposes, two people can't put something on the agenda. They can only submit something to the council to approve for it to go onto agenda.
Correct. Yes.
Does that,
I didn't know that.
that's why I said it has to be on the agenda that it's taken care of.
So I
don't have it right in front of me, sorry.
So in the past, before the governance policies took place, it was just two people, two council members used to request something on the agenda. It would go on the agenda. I think what Manager Mack is saying is after the policy was taken in, now she takes direction from a majority. So it's kind of almost like the ordinance and the governance are a little bit different.
I don't particularly care one way or the other.
my personal belief is that if two people want something on the agenda, it should go on to the agenda for at least discussion.
I agree.
I think for us to go through that process, maybe delay something. I think if two people want something on there, it's, at that point, it's usually discussion. It seems to me like
We
that
would
should be enough.
typically be wanting something on a work session agenda, right?
Well, it could be any agenda.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
Whatever you want to do.
Okay.
So my question is, we get to business, is that the time to bring it up to two people?
We don't have old business. We have anymore.
Yeah, well.
So the other business or council
Actions,
announcements.
yeah.
Yeah.
So is that when it'd be brought up?
Well, The question is, does the current as it's defined, if I'm hearing correctly, it, the way it's written today is two people take it to the council, the majority has to approve to put it on, correct? Okay. So the question is, should that policy change? Because then Randy, what you're suggesting is if it gets changed, that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I would say that one thing to be cautious of is, anyway, it doesn't matter.
No,
But-
please.
Well, it gets weird, right? When two of you, so it's the city manager's responsibility to build the agendas. So items come to the manager decides what goes on an agenda or what doesn't. Unless directed by the council to put something on there. So two of you can't give direction to the manager. Four of you can. That's the where I find some, yeah.
But Amanda, I could go to you and I could sit down and say, here's this issue, this really needs to get addressed by the council. You might say, that's got merit, and you put it on the agenda, right?
Yep.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
is that taking action from the majority of the council?
No, but
Doing it because
if
they can
two of
have
you
merit.
contact me and say, you need to put this on the agenda, that's a different type of action.
I don't think we're in, we're the owners of the agenda, ultimately, right? We should have a say of what goes in there. Because sometimes two people might have a very valid point that until you discuss it, the council may not even understand or realize it's worthy of discussion. Right?
Mhm.
So
And maybe I'm
I
not
think that's what
understanding what
faith
you're
is.
asking for, because that's never how it's operated where I've been before. And it is the agenda is the manager's responsibility. And we're probably overthinking it, but
Probably. So if Mike calls you and says, hey, Bruce, I want to put this on the agenda for the next meeting, well, how would you react to that?
well,
I mean.
I don't know.
Okay, say it ain't Mike, say it's Lynn.
Doesn't matter.
That'd make a big difference.
Yeah.
I guess I'm a little off guard because I wasn't prepared to have questions answered about how council members put things on the agendas, because I truly, maybe 3 times in my entire career, have had council members request to have something on the agenda. I've had council members request that hey, let's talk about this at a work session. That makes a lot of sense to me, but you guys are talking about putting something on an agenda for action. If you want to have something just for discussion would go on a work session agenda. So you could vet out where do you stand on this? Where do you stand on that? But to put something on a regular council agenda, those agendas are largely for action. Unless there's a presentation, right, that we're giving. So however you want to do it is fine, but I think you all need to be on the same page so that I'm not getting crossways with any of you that I'm doing it the wrong way.
We need to decide, does it take a majority or just people, basically?
I guess, as long as we're talking about it, we can decide now, or, it's getting slightly off the topic of what the city manager wanted to discuss, but I'm willing to have the discussion now if you want. I was always operating under the assumption that any 2 councilmen could put anything on the agenda.
That's where I was at. That was my understanding. I did not know
Mine
that
as
you had
well.
to have a.
Spend.
I understand though now with this form of government, I can understand how it's the work sessions that were this new agenda preparation guide, but with the work sessions, we can have the 2 councilmen put it on the radar, put it on a work session, have our discussions. I'm with you, Mike, on that too. Discussing it, because sometimes I don't always see like this golf cart thing coming up. My gut is like, I don't know much about it. I don't know if I'm really for that or not. But then again, there's probably some great points I'm not seeing yet. So that's why the healthy discussion. So that's where the work session comes into play, right? And then it goes on the agenda if we properly vet it at the work session. That makes sense?
So 2 people can put it on the work session agenda. without council approval? Well, it should be.
I mean,
We don't need to.
so if we're trying to figure things out here in a group, that would be my preference. If you want someone on a work session, you want to talk about whatever, yeah, two of you tell me to put it on a work session. I would keep the council meeting agendas sacred for action. And that doesn't mean you can't have discussions during the council meetings, but those are intentional. We're bringing this forward for action. You're going to take, even if the action is I'm tabling it because I didn't think that we talked about it enough. I don't have enough information, but there's action. The work sessions are, here's our master park and rec plan. Are there things that are glaring in here that are missing that, we want to dive in a little deeper? Nope. All right, then we're moving it forward for action. That would be my preference. I think it's easier to manage. I would caution that if you want to have, two people put something on a council agenda, you could have a council where that's all they do. And they're, oh, I want to talk about this at the council meeting. Oh, I want to talk about this at the council meeting. And there's no order. And it's very difficult from a staff management perspective to keep things in line and orderly with your decision-making process.
City Attorney Carrico.
Rule 28 has the city manager is responsible for ensuring an agenda is established and approved for each council meeting. Any two council members can otherwise place an item on the agenda.
That's how.
That's what your guys'
interpreted it.
that is your current.
There is no council approval of.
I know,
what's
see
that
two.
to go.
What's the proper procedure? Would that be follow your procedure and have it in by Wednesday?
Well,
Or you-
sorry.
so this is ordinance or charter?
This is ordinance. So
Yep.
this is where you would flush out that.
That's where your governance policy
I'm not gonna
comes in.
call the fluff, right? So how exactly are you conveying that? Are you just emailing and copying, emailing the city manager by, Tuesday, Wednesday by noon? Councilman Danforth emails and says, hey, I talked with Councilman Bueller and we want this on the agenda. He's copied Councilman Bueller and perhaps the mayor. It's whatever you guys decide as to, just so that the city manager knows, how are you going to communicate that to her? So she knows this is how it's supposed to come.
And my original question was how, and
Yeah.
would you have to add, Chris?
If it's simply to just put an item on there Wednesday at noon, but if it's something that you want action to be taken on, because we have to prepare items for that, I would say it needs to be the week prior. That would be my preference. So the Wednesday council meeting's on Monday, it's 10 days prior. If it's something that, if you want us to prepare documents or have information available. Because if you put it on Wednesday at noon before the meeting, we don't have enough time to prepare everything to get it attached for the Monday meeting.
And I would, sorry.
Finance officer, Betsy.
Oh, the only thing that I was gonna say is before the manager form of government, it didn't happen often, but when it did, they usually called me. And it was more of an ask over the phone, and I always just made the comment, you gotta have two, and it has to come through email from two people. So that I know that there's two.
And I'm assuming then, and I'm assuming going forward, that you then kind of like hold our hand saying, okay, give me whatever the information is. So that it's put in a proper format and the right information for an agenda item, right?
Councilman Tupper.
So just to clarify this, two people, before we approve the agenda at the beginning of a meeting, can't come out and add an agenda item during that meeting.
For that meeting?
Yeah.
I wouldn't think so.
You need the 24-hour time.
Okay.
Yeah, it's got the notice period.
Councilman Shetty.
In an effort to try to unify, listening to the direction we're going in this discussion now, if it was me personally, if me and Councilman Vernon said something that we were agreement on, personally, I would either just discuss it potentially on our 3-on-1 visit, potentially, if it happens, the timing is there, but if not, I would recommend it for a work session personally, because that's what we can talk about during the work session, and then we can put it on the agenda. That's how I foresee doing it, but obviously we can do it differently. Sounds like we can put it on the agenda, but I'm also understanding what's being communicated is try to get this dialed in and more organized and in a better way. So I would recommend that we try to be, use the work session method before putting it on the agenda, but again, my perspective on it.
Yogi, Director Bennett.
Just from a very high level of the governance, the city manager forum. The only comments I was gonna make that relate to not Amanda specifically, but the city manager. I think the logic behind whether we do 2 or majority, I mean, if you think about that, it just stands to reason. If personally, I don't care if we do 2 or 4 or whatever, if we got a policy, let's just follow it. But if it is 2 and the manager is at the will of 2 council members, a minority, and that becomes a recurring theme, that puts that manager in a tough spot because 5 are constantly questioning, why is this coming up? Why are we discussing this? What's going on? Why did you let this get on the agenda? And in an extreme case, you could have the most terrible subject the city ever thought of talking about brought forward for a discussion by a minority of council members. And then the rest of them, the majority of them, livid and not happy about that. And the city manager is going to be the one that's going to take the lumps for it. So from a city manager governance standpoint, I think that's why I think the goal is that, especially with this new process, making sure that we're all in sync and just talking through, I think in the work session and at the regular meeting, there's other items of discussion brought up by any council member. They can throw them at the wall. If everybody's on board and we're all in sync and we all want to talk about them again or move those forward. So I think there's a natural process here that we're going to see that, we're not trying to silence anybody whatsoever. It's more about protecting that form of government so that it doesn't put that position in an awkward situation tomorrow or 5 years down the road. Because you could have, again, the ugliest discussion that the city ever dreamt of come forward by 2 council members and the other 5 of you in complete opposition with it and not even in agreement that it should have been brought forward. But the goal is not to silence anybody, is to have a collected way to work through this information flow and bring these items forward. And this grid and this stuff's really going to help tremendously.
Okay, I would just say, I like what you've shown. The question that we had from the council, legally speaking, any 2 council members can put something on the agenda. If you go beyond that, in our own self-adopted policies, we have also agreed that the council should govern as a majority. So that's where you have the conflict where it is really up to the council to police themselves. Obviously, if 2 people want to go rogue, that is also democracy, because democracy is protecting the voice of the minority while also reaching a decision based upon the majority. So with that said, if 2 councilmen decide to start going rogue and putting things on the agenda, the rest of the council is going to probably police that and say, we're not even going to go down that road. And I mean, we can see what happens. It hasn't been an issue yet. I just say, this is the balance that we've got, but the rules are pretty well laid out. So, but I appreciate what you've done there.
All I got.
Very good. Budget process overview.
I did email this to all of you, but here is the 2025 budget calendar, just so you have it. If you've got questions as we begin our work here in April. Got some of our small group meetings. Here. You guys know it. I think you all have one. So here's the calendar. We're going to kick off in May internally. By June 21st, all of the CIP requests will be submitted. And for the first time, we will submit our budget requests electronically into our new financial software. So that is very exciting. Kristen's very excited to train us all on how to do that. You'll see that July 1st are when the subsidy applications are due. So we'll get a press release out about that. That's the outside agency funding that we do. We've got couple weeks where myself and Kristen will meet with all of the individual departments to review the operating requests, any fee schedule updates. This is a change from last year where we did the fee schedule at the end. We really need to be doing it to coincide with our budget because that it does impact revenues. And then we've got the property tax levy. September 9th is when we'll have the proposed budget out to all of you. And then the first work session to review the budget will be September 23rd. We do have two work sessions scheduled. We do have a third one set aside if we need it. And then we will have budget books out and available on the website by December. So, lengthened our internal process, but condensed when we get information out to everyone. So any questions about that?
So city manager, I'm going to just, rather than get into a debate about the budget itself, this is just the calendar. Okay, so any questions on the calendar, council?
Well, and we can talk about the budget itself. I mean, if that's, the budget process or the, well, but I also need to know, I mean, if there are certain expectations that you all have before we start our work in May or questions that you have, that would be valuable to know.
We've had several discussions over several months about about the council having a session of our own for strategic planning. And it would certainly be nice if we had that done prior to these dates. That's gonna have to happen in a real quick hurry. We're looking at 30,000 foot view for what we plan to do with Watertown moving forward. I think that's gonna have an effect on where we go with this.
Actually, Councilman Bueller, I would agree. I mean, my thought process was, and I was going to send this out, that will come in very close heels of the city manager review so that we can set what we expect the city manager to be doing. So it'll all be coming very fast here in the next couple weeks. Councilman Danforth, sorry.
Man, is it typical be having a budget process last 7 months?
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah. Well, for communities of this size, yes. Even in my previous community in Iowa, we ran on a July 1 to June 30th fiscal year. And I mean, we worked on budget at least 6-7 months of the year. Now Canton, where I was at, it was about a 4-month process. But there's just a lot of moving parts and trying to, balance up the dollars and also playing in here, we have union negotiations as well, which can have an impact on, obviously, on the employee side of it, on the wage and benefits side.
And that's Officer Thompson.
So the one thing that I will say in regards to the budget, a couple of years ago, we switched the time frame. We used to have it approved by the end of September. Now we switched to November. I think what the calendar kind of shows is we've stuck with the internal side of it as far as our request for departments to get their numbers in. But it does leave a really solid July, August, kind of September for us to get those first half numbers in. So then the manager does have that ability, right? If you see revenues are trending up, we then have those couple months. So I think it keeps that expectation on the departments the same, but it does give us a couple more months to kind of work with the numbers, prioritize, something like that.
Sure, they're accurate.
That's council. All right, let's go to the golf cart discussion.
You ready?
Very nice.
So Chief, while you're calling that out, I was just going to share these. I found these in the city hall storage closet. I have no idea what they come from, but I mean.
Are they magnets?
No, but I'm guessing, well, it's obviously from quite a few years ago. I don't know if anyone wants.
I don't know.
Yeah, that like one of those.
You and I might be.
It was probably used during some kind of special event that they had golf carts.
Anyway, Chief Toomey, sorry.
All right, good evening, Council and Mayor. Thanks for having me, I guess. This is not my proposal. I was directed by the city manager to come up with ordinance wording if you as a council decided that you wanted to allow golf carts driven on city streets. So with that direction, I did a lot of research. I visited with Dan Thorson from GL Power Sports and Golf Carts is the one who kind of brought this forward. And it's done in many other communities across the state and across the nation. My job as a police officer is not only to reduce crime, but also reduce the fear of crime. So when you hear about golf carts driving on our roads, what's the first thing you say? Oh my gosh, it's gonna be mayhem. Kids are gonna be killed. So I decided to take an unbiased look at it, and then I did as much research as I can. There's not much research out there. When I talked to the state people who control all our accident records and all that, and there's nothing about golf carts. You know, it's considered either an off-road vehicle or a slow-moving vehicle. So it's hard to decipher how many people have been injured or killed in golf cart accidents. Our current ordinance, as you know, allows anybody with a permit, a free permit, to convey directly to and from a golf course. We do have a few of those. When we first were examining that ordinance, we were like, oh my gosh, everybody's going to be driving golf carts. And there's probably 2 or 3 that drive their golf carts on a regular basis to the golf course. I did put together what my team feels is the safest possible ordinance if you do decide to allow this. But the purpose of this discussion is to give us directions on whether you want to move forward with this ordinance or not. So I did pass it to our city attorney and she went through it, found a lot of typos and misspellings, but other than that, she agreed with the body of it as far as a legal standpoint. But it's ultimately up to you whether you want an ordinance allowing golf carts to operate on our roadways. And with that, I'll go over those. Feel free to jump in and ask me any questions. But I took the whole ordinance and revamped it. Most of it's based on Aberdeen's ordinance. I spoke with them out there. They haven't had any issues. They allow it with some restrictions, and there really hasn't been any concerns for that community. I know Mitchell does it. I believe Huron does it. So there are municipalities across our state that allow it, but there's a lot of restrictions. So I'm just gonna go right down to 403A. You can't drive them on state or federal highway routes. So the state prohibits us from operating a golf cart on 212, on 81, on Highway 20. You can't do it. But they do allow you to come up with the rules on whether you want them to operate on city streets. You can bisect them, you can go across them, you just can't travel on them. So automatically that eliminates 212, Highway 81, and Highway 20. So they can't operate on them. So other than that, it's on any street that's 25 miles an hour or less. So that's majority of it is for neighborhoods. And that was Dan's vision, is that a golf cart is fun for neighborhoods, you know, so that you can jump on your golf cart and maybe drive over to your neighbor's house or drive to the corner store. You know, he envisions this world of friendly neighbors, you know, and driving around in suburbia. And I think there's some credence to it, I guess. But you can't operate it on state or federal highways, or also on sidewalks or recreational trails. Any questions about that? Okay, you have to get a permit. That permit would come through the police department. In your agenda, I did pretty much copy Aberdeen's permit application and made it our own. They would come here. The owner of the cart, the gold cart, would have to show that he has insurance for the cart, and that they got to be at least 18 years old and have insurance. So they come in and they get a 3-year permit. And whatever fee you guys decide that you want to set. Aberdeen's is $75 for 3 years. They come in, they get a permit. We issue for lack of a better term, a license plate number for them. It's a permit number. We'll have a database. Go ahead.
On the insurance thing, I have a golf cart. That's insured under my homeowner's policy. Is that what you're seeking? Is that what somebody has to have? Or do they have to actually have an insurance policy like a car?
Yeah. Pardon me?
No.
It's required by the state that you have to have, I believe it's 25,000, and 50,000. So it is a separate policy, and maybe somebody else could answer that better than I can. I don't.
Anybody that-
Anybody that might know insurance.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, the requirement is the same as driving a motor vehicle, which is 25,000, 50,000, which is a per limit for injury coverage, a maximum accident limit for injury coverage, and then the last 25,000 is property damage liability. Real common.
Yep.
Some companies charge $30 a year. So that's not the issue. Your homeowner's policy will only cover it on the property you own and on the golf course. For liability. So you start letting anyone right now drive down the road. There is likely not coverage unless they purchased a separate policy.
And they have to have that policy and they have to show it to us.
And they currently would have to right now, my guess is, otherwise they're illegally driving on a roadway, right?
The ones that are operating on the roadway, I would assume, yes. Yeah, to get that free permit, I think that's proven. Again, it's only happened like once or twice, so there's not a lot of them. But anybody operating it has to have a valid driver's license. They have to have insurance and be able to locate and show us the serial number of the cart. But the most important part is the safety issue to me and public safety. So it's what equipment is out there and what can they have on it. As you can see, we put taillights, stoplights, headlamps, horn, rearview mirrors, windshield, reflectors, the front and rear turn signals, and any other applicable equipment that makes it safe for the roadway. The only thing we can't make it have is DOT rated tires. Go.
When you say it's gotta have turn signals, ATV doesn't have to have turn signals.
They don't. But to me, I think a golf cart has obstruction, right? It has the roof, it has the golf bags on the back. You can't see the person. I would feel much better having a blinker, a turn signal on it.
Nothing wrong with that, I'm just.
And GL Power Sports says he has kits that people can purchase and convert.
You know, horn, you say horn too.
Horn, yep. The only thing that I didn't list, and that would be up to you, is seatbelts, whether you want a seatbelt retrofitted on it. Before I end, I'll let you know what arguments Dan had for what I've listed, and you guys can make a decision from there. So it shouldn't be operated more than 25 miles an hour, and I guess I'll say it now. Dan wanted me to take that out because he says, I think it's Mr. Heemiller's cart can go 33 miles an hour, and he feels safer because when he's on Golf Course Road or 4th Avenue, that he's trying to keep up with traffic. Just so you know, back to my accident investigation days years ago, anything 30 miles an hour or greater is considered a fatality in a collision, especially if you're not seat belted in. The collision is 2 times more than it would be at 20 miles an hour if you're doing 30 miles an hour. So 25 miles an hour is a lot more safe than it is than 30 miles an hour. If we're going to restrict them to 25 mile an hour roadways, we don't need carts that do 40 or 50. And I just envision these people getting crazy and putting on these mudders and ramping up the engine. So they only can be operated during daytime hours, half an hour after sunrise and a half an hour before sunset. So no work, no driving around at night. They can only be operated a half an hour after sunrise and a half an hour before sunset. No person shall ride in the cargo area of the golf cart while it's in motion. They must be seated at all time. No more than 2 adults and no more than 3 people total shall ride on the same bench seat. Nobody can ride on each other's laps. It can't be operated in a cemetery, municipal cemetery. Shouldn't be operated on public sidewalks or recreational trails. Only during good weather, not in fog or rain or where it would reduce visibility. For more than 300 feet. Obviously, you shouldn't be chasing people or animals and should not tow anything. Yes.
So you said not in the cemetery, but you don't cover places like City Park. And I know that's been asked question to me because right now they do not allow it.
Right. And you can't operate it in any motor vehicle unless you're on the roadway in City Park.
But they won't even let you operate a golf cart on the roadway out in City Park. To my knowledge.
Yeah, that's a park rule.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
park rule, yeah. So that would still be covered under the park rule then.
And Dan also wanted me to remove that shall not tow anything. His reasoning behind that was sometimes a cart will break down and he'll strap up to his cart and tow it, but I don't think it's very safe and it's not gonna happen very often.
Well, here, car breaks down, well, I guess people do hook rope to them and pull them, but majority of the time they're all the way by record.
Yeah. So I think that's pretty much it in the ordinance. That's important. Obviously, it's governed by any motor vehicle laws, DUIs, careless driving, all that type of thing. It's going to cause more enforcement, but I think if you strictly enforced it, I'm not going to die on the hill of public safety because I don't think there's going to be 1,000 people all getting golf carts and driving crazy and police are going to be chasing everybody like Benny Hill. Go ahead.
My son lives up in Aberdeen and I've studied the Aberdeen ordinance quite heavily. He's lived up there 6-7 years now. And I said, do you regularly see golf carts on the road? He said, only when I'm by the golf course. And he didn't even know you could legally drive them because he never sees them anymore. So I don't think it's going to be as big it might be at the very beginning, right? But I don't think it's going to be a big deal after that. So.
Yes, sir.
So I'm learning tonight that we can drive them with a 0 fee right now.
Right.
If you go
directly to so, and that's also the exception in where you can operate them is I left that in the wording where 25 miles an hour or less, or you're going to and from the golf course. So that allows you to get on golf course road
and because I did get a public comment on this today, would that be left alone? Would we still be able to drive it directly to the golf course?
Yes, it's in there.
Without
permit?
No. It's up to you. If you want.
Actually, I want to make sure. The manager, you were saying something?
Well, I would agree with Chief Toomey, because it's too easy to subvert the system that if, I live at the golf course. Oh, really? Do you? I mean, it adds a whole level of enforcement to PD that, they want people to take on. But again, it's your decision. But I would recommend that if you're gonna have a fee, it's regardless of where you're driving it.
Just so you know, nationally, the estimate is about 15,000 people are injured or killed in a golf cart accident. That's the information I could find, and the vast majority of them are children.
Councilman Jordan still has the floor.
Well, like Amanda and Max said, if we decide there should be a plan, I now start leaning towards the initial questions of the if. I mean, what's our cost of this, and why don't we just leave it at 0 if we decide to do this? That's just a comment.
And if I can, Mayor, I would suggest leaving it because everybody's going to want to get a permit. Our database is going to get loaded. I think you got to have a little skin in the game if you're going to obey the law, right? So I think having a permit on a 3-year basis, and we have a database so if we see a car driving reckless, or a citizen sees a car driving recklessly, they can get that permit number, they can give us a call, and then we could resolve that matter quicker. If they're going to be operating on the streets, we're going to have to still verify their insurance. We got to verify. So there's a cost to staffing. Staff's going to have to verify they have a driver's license. They're going to have to look at the insurance. So.
I have a bias on this, and not a good bias. And it's because of what I see at and around the lake and around our golf courses. And I'm just gonna say, and I know you guys can't be out there all the time. That's out of control out there. It's out of control. Many, many, many times they're on cart paths, there's young kids, there's many kids. I got my car out there one night and my car got ran into by a golf cart with 4 or 5 kids in it. And that's what concerns me. It really isn't I'm gonna say this, don't get personal, the responsible adult But people think because it's a golf cart, I'll go to the bar and I'll have a few beers and I'll drive home because it's just a golf cart. And then I see, because I see that out at the golf course all the time. And then I see all these kids and I am shocked that we haven't had significant injuries with kids out there. Yeah, I just, that's my negative bias. If it wasn't for that, I'd go, not a big deal.
So I agree with you, Councilman, and we have a problem with juveniles, especially on South Lake Drive. We're constantly going out there chasing kids around on golf carts. So I believe that this ordinance might help us in that matter, because now they have to have a permit. If there's a golf cart operating on the street without a permit, we'd be better able to check it out. Go ahead.
Which takes us to your question of should they be free? Should they be required? And I will tell you that these kids that are driving golf carts out there aren't even close to being
Exactly. No driver's license. So right away, we have an enforcement. So we can increase our enforcement.
Councilman Beeler?
But, and I think, you know, if they have to apply for the permit, then they get the rules, I would imagine.
Yeah.
That would come along with it. So, you know, if they know they have to have a permit, they're gonna have to see what the rules are. Cause I bet if you query 100 people out there that use golf carts, most of them probably don't have any idea what any of the rules are.
Right. So I did come up with a list of rules that would be given to each person who comes in for their permit. So not only will we have an ordinance, but they'll also have it in paper. Here's the rules. And then they'll have the application that they'd have to fill out. And it's not transferable, so they can't sell the cart. It doesn't go with the cart.
But if they buy, let's say they trade in the cart,
They got
wait
to
a 3-year,
come back application.
then there's another fee.
Yeah, it's cart specific.
I'm curious, I'll allow it. Have you discussed with Dan regarding the fee? Because I'm just thinking about it, and I know there's a lot of adults. I mean, the kids driving the golf carts down on South Lake Drive is indefensible. I mean, that's kind of outrageous, but there are a lot of adults who either live very close by, or there is like a golf cart storage shed about 2 blocks away from Cattail and 5 blocks away from Prairie Winds. And every single one of them is going to need to get a license to drive. Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking, if I were Dan, I could see where this could hurt his business. Because there's going to be in my mind, there's probably very few people who want to get it to Hudson over to their neighbor.
Well, they're violating the law currently because they're not allowed to operate on the street.
Yeah.
So this will give them a way to do it legally.
Would we include, when we provide this, would we include what the penalties could be?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Is that what, I think that would.
Yeah, it would typically a class 2 misdemeanor punishable up to $500 fine and 30 days in jail. So then it's up to the judge to set whatever fine that is.
Isn't there a public flogging?
Yes.
There is.
That'll be coming during the budget.
That's the
That'll be added.
4 times.
second offense.
New revenue source.
So again, from the chief of police's perspective, I would oppose it because it's a public safety thing, but I'm not going to die on that hill, right? I don't think it's going to be as bad as some might think. It is going to be publicly debated heavily, so. Yes.
What's the suggested fees? Is there, that's not
Aberdeen is $75 for 3 years. So
$25 a year. I don't know. We'll just leave over that on the golf cart.
Yeah.
What's 9 holes? How much does that cost?
Yeah.
Sorry, Councilman Beeler.
Well, no, I was going to ask that same question. What do we charge for ATV?
It's nothing. It's registered as a vehicle, a motorcycle license. Yeah.
What's counted?
And side-by-sides also don't need blinkers. You can use hand signals as well, so.
Chief, I got a question. Most of these carts, when they come out of the factory, are limited to about a 12 to 14 miles per hour.
Yeah, Dan said his goes 19.
But like
19 miles.
Mine's 14. He sold me a slow cart. So,
thank God.
mine's 14. But anyway, how does that, is that a concern on our streets? That's the people that just say, okay, I'm not gonna like take the governor or whatever they all do to it, that backs it up.
It's absolutely.
Is that 12 to 14? Because I do believe coming out of the factory, I think they're 14.
So if you envision just a neighborhood street, it really is not gonna matter, right? If you're just driving in your neighborhood like the vision is. But if you're on Fourth Avenue heading to the golf course and you're doing 14 miles an hour, and people have to pass it, it does pose some danger. We can deem it as a slow moving vehicle, but what that requires is a large triangle and a six.
So that's happening.
Hanging on your goal, I'll let the chief finish.
So, and also a flag, I think it's like a tractor, 6-foot flag or something. Go ahead.
So in my previous community, we did the same thing. We allowed for golf carts and ATVs. The state law was different in Iowa, and we did require slow moving vehicles. And people wanted it bad enough, they put the orange thing on the back and it worked. They did it.
So in your decision-making process, you have to keep in mind the evolution of EV vehicles and what it's gonna be a challenge for all of us as it comes in a short time. Right now, there's electric dirt bikes that are coming out, if you haven't seen those things. And they're completely quiet, and it's gonna cause us some issues and some more of these things. Even our electric bikes right now, people aren't aware that if it's 750 watts or more, you need a motorcycle license according to state law. And, you know, people are buying these 1,000-watt, 1,500 watt electric bikes, and you really can't ride it unless you have a class 2 motorcycle license.
I think Gerald said she'd go like that.
Well, the public feedback we're gonna get, which I already got from one, but it's gonna be multiple, is that the storage sheds that he's talking about, the multiple golf cart or garages along parts of the lake that Mike has been talking about, it's not costing them anything to go directly to the golf course, right? And when Dan hears, the discussion of the discussion of recommending there's a fee, and his customers hear a recommendation. It'll be interesting to see over the next 2 weeks, month, or a couple months, when people hear this information, what we hear back.
I don't think it's unreasonable to ask for a fee based on the staff's work that they're gonna have to put into it, so.
Yeah, that I'm not, I get it.
Yeah. No, I get you.
But when the market or when those that have golf carts right now hear of this, we're gonna get more messages. I don't really want to read this one, but we'll get more colorful messages like the one.
That's what we're saying.
I think from a public safety standpoint, I do have some legitimate concerns of it going too slow on Golf Course Road. I could see that potential of having accidents. I mean, to Amanda's point, we would have to I would almost recommend putting slow moving signs on those vehicles, but at 14 miles an hour and people are going 35, 45 out there, what is the speed limit? 45?
45 on Fourth.
That is.
But they do it already. I mean, we already have a free permit that allows them to do it. So again, there's not gonna be 1,000 golf carts out there, driving to the golf course on 40.
City manager.
Fourth.
I would, going back to the grid, and we put in the options, so we're requesting direction.
Yep.
And do you want us to prepare formal ordinance amendments for you to have further discussions? Or are we good with the way things are right now? And maybe this is a topic that gets discussed some other date. I can tell you that I've not had people coming out of the woodwork saying, we want this, but a couple of persistent people, and I know that they've reached out to many of you, which is why we're discussing it. To Councilman Pepper's point, we implemented this in my previous community. It really is a couple of handfuls of people who do it, which is fine if you want to be able to provide that option for people. But if you're not feeling it, that's okay too, and we can just move on to something else.
Yeah, the weather, the climate, the reduced range and speed of these things, it's not gonna be practical for a lot of people.
It's not Florida gated community.
Right.
Which is,
Kind of someone picking up on this.
Okay, so I'm torn because I would like to have this at an actual city council meeting, but not as a formal action. I want it to raise awareness because I think that there's a lot of homeowners. I'm saying the people who are not a problem, who live very close by and who actually do just drive their golf cart straight to and from the golf course, they're not the problem. The problem seems like you already have the ability to address with the kids, with driving to the bar, driving drunk, all of those things. I still think, I think this could hurt Dan's business. Watertown is not a community with a lot of communities where I just don't know. I mean,
I would also just say that, I mean, you do see this in other communities where people are driving to their neighbors,
Yeah.
right? It doesn't, they don't have to live at the golf course, wherever in town, their little neighborhood, which isn't necessarily gated, but people do their own thing as a neighborhood. We could put it on other business as a discussion item and give direction then on if you wanted us to bring ordinance amendments or not. Or you can put it on the next, the May work session as well.
I will for council direction. I mean, I think having this out in public so that we could start hearing from a few of the people who are going to get. I think you're going to get a lot more people who are going to get mad at this than people who are going to like it.
I don't hear you isolated.
Yeah.
You really is.
Yeah.
I just can't see anybody getting too mad over $25 here.
And here's, Mayor, if I may.
Yeah.
I want to go back to it. My biggest concern, and it's not with the adults I see.
Oh, mine too.
It's
The kid.
not with the adults I see, other than you. But
He's over here asking if he can drive it in
I
a
think
day. I would be concerned.
Implement this. And I think if we were to have the license requirement and the rule, I think the incident rate at and around the golf courses and the lakes would go down.
I agree.
Because I'm flabbergasted with what I see out there.
Yeah.
And it's not a one-off deal.
No.
It happens every day out there. And we can't just sit here and post a police officer out there watching.
We do what
I mean,
you
it's
can out
bad.
there, that's for sure. We're out there a lot for those types of
And-
complaints.
I mean, I know that even at one point, there was discussion with people at one of the golf courses with their kids. And the parents just blew it off, golf cart.
Talking about my friends.
Talking about you. No, but that's a concern to me, and if this helps in that manner, because sometimes if we want something and we want to expand something, sometimes you gotta give on the other side, and that means $25 a year. Or maybe it's not $25,
Yeah,
maybe it's $15 a year, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I don't know, I just think there's a worthiness to that.
That's her.
I just have a question. So we give permits currently if you live at the golf course, correct? Do we have any of these restrictions on those permits?
No,
Age restriction?
No.
So, I mean, perhaps an avenue to explore is, yeah, you can have your free permit, we're not allowing them all over town, but you only get to operate it if you follow these rules, and that eliminates or helps mitigate the 14-year-olds that are out there.
we do have, you have to have a driver's license to drive
You
it.
do,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. But all too often, mom and dad think they're gonna just drive it around in their yard and pretty soon they're out driving down South Lake Drive
And so if you.
to get the permit.
Exactly, but you can't drive it without the permit,
Right.
right?
Vehicle is permitted.
So dad could buy the permit and then let
Right.
14-year-old.
Yep.
What's a quick point of clarification? So roads, I wrote down roads 25 miles per hour or less. That was recommended, I believe, right?
Right.
So that means they couldn't drive it from town to the golf course. We don't even have the slow moving vehicle.
We do have it, I worded it that way.
Then you couldn't drive it on a 35-mile-an-hour speed zone.
As long as they're going directly to the golf course.
On the golf course, but not on this course.
Unless you guys decide you want to take that out, and then that just cuts off the people. The Bob Heaton ones.
Right, I just like, yeah, I got that 25-mile-an-hour. So make sure that's, yeah.
My vision is if we allow it too much wide open in town, if we allow it on 14th Avenue or 19th Street where there's 35 or whatever, here's what's gonna happen. And I seen it happen with one of the city employees one time. Stopped down by the bridge on Highway 212 to pick up a piece of debris. He was stopped. Now, these golf carts don't go real fast, but car went around him real quick. Somebody in a motorcycle hit the guy's city employees pick up.
Anything more than 30 miles an hour unbuckled, it's a fatality. We just had a mail truck that was delivering mail get rear-ended. So, I mean, could it happen? But the same thing could happen with somebody riding a bicycle or a scooter or a skateboard.
And I'm gonna go to Amanda, to your point. I think we create something and we take it to the public and let the public come talk about it. They got 2 shots at their input on it and see where they're at.
Yeah, I was hoping Dan.
We're trying to do something that's helpful. But we also need to make sure that what we do is responsible. Public input, that's what it's all about.
That's where I'm gonna go. That's how I feel too.
He wants to bring the ordinance amendments forward for a first reading.
And I would say don't put any more work into it because I think that we're gonna have some questions that we want to ask in public.
I'll bring this
raise us. Yeah. I agree. Yeah.
All about keeping people safe.
I mean, I'm going to be in Deadwood for the 15th, so if we can put that on.
Sure.
The May.
May 6th.
Did we,
Okay.
not quite yet?
Pardon me?
All right. Are we done? All parts?
Thank you.
I am, thank you.
Ambulance, VIP item, Keep rolling.
Want me to? I'll be quick, Mayor.
The what?
The next 3 items.
You spoke to attachment. Oh, yeah, sorry, city manager.
No, that's okay. So the next 3 items, we did a similar action at the last meeting. These are planned purchases in the long-term capital plan. Again, due to long lead and build times, we're asking you to consider authorizing us to go ahead and order the next 3 items. Payment will not come until 2025. So it is a little different. We're not supplementing the 2024 budget. We're just saying when we put together the 25 budget, if you want to move forward with this, these items are already spoken for. So with that, Don's going to talk about the ambulance and Heath and his crew are going to talk about solid waste items. So.
Okay, thanks, Amanda, and thanks, council members in there. So you can see up here, this is a buying group bid from Savick for our ambulance. Again, we're on a 10-year rotation for our ambulance. This is going to be replacing a 2015 Horton Ford ambulance. I believe we have 140,000 miles on that specific rig. We did actually get another buying group bid as well, but that came in quite a bit higher. Matter of fact, I talked to Amanda about this, and the group that the company we buy from, it's Horton, and it's a company out of Ohio. The dealer is actually out of Minnesota, and we've had great luck with these folks for many years. But the buying group bid came in quite a bit higher than we expected. And so then we went out and looked for a couple other ambulance companies and dealers, and we did get another buying group bid from McQueen, which is a company that works with the Mears ambulances. We did do some research. Couple of services in the state are using them, have had great luck with them. There's a couple of small things that are different, but in general, the specifications are almost identical. Okay. And we felt really good about the numbers that came in. The bid price that came in from those folks were $294,000, $854. And just a heads up, the other one was like $365,000, which is our normal company that we buy from on a regular basis. And of course, we have ambulance equipment that goes with it. We have about $97,000 worth. We'll get into all 4 of them. One of them is a Pro Load. It's the power load that helps put the cot into the ambulance. Of course, the cot itself is a power load, a Power Pro cot as well. And then we have the CPR machine, which is really a really advanced function for us that we've used for years. And then we also have a stair chair with it as well. We do have some deductions. There is a $47,000 trade-in for that Medic, excuse me, and it's a 2015, like I told you. And we do get a trade-in for the cot for $2,500. And we also can put in a grant through the South Dakota Municipal League that will get us around a $4,500 credit as well, or excuse me, $4,000 credit. Overall, again, we have $384,750 that we identified in the long-term 212 fund that Amanda alluded to. And we feel really great that the numbers came in at this level. We're at $338,602 that would be allocated for the 2025 long-term capital outlay. Yes.
Do you typically replace all the equipment every time you get a new ambulance?
Every 10 years, yes.
I heard you say that these have a way to a power system below the cot, but yet we already have power cots.
Okay, so the power cot will lift the cot up and down.
Yeah.
The power load is attached to the ambulance. And when you put the ambulance up to the ambulance, instead of you lifting it up, it takes it right in on its own. Just like you guys did when you're out at the ops day out there. Yep. Which we didn't have it for that, of course. I think Amanda actually lifted, didn't you?
I dropped.
I broke a rib.
She dropped it.
I did not.
I could never be a fireman.
I could carry the body out, but I did not drop the cart.
Okay.
Brad.
And also the timeline on this, Amanda is right. The build on this will be 18 plus months. We're talking October, November of next year of 2025 before we'll actually even see the ambulance. Just a little heads up on the 2023 ambulance that was supposed to be last year. We do have actual pictures. Scott and I just got pictures today from the company. It's almost done. We're talking maybe now June or July before we receive it, but that was about a 2.5-year build on it. So. Yes, sir.
What are still years coming?
Do we physically, we go out and drive these things and look at the systems, and work with them a little bit before we make a decision?
Oh, absolutely. Yep, absolutely. Great question. Yep.
I want to expand on that. So driving it is the same chassis that's on them. It's the same chassis we've had. It's just, we're changing the box building. That makes sense. And then, Chief, I hate to say this to you, but I think that should be Medic 3, it's ambulance straight in, not Medic 4. Just so for clarification.
You're correct. Yep. We'll switch that.
Yeah, Mike.
I'm sure Councilman Taylor got that one. I'm sure that.
I'm a detail guy, but I didn't want to point it out.
And I got to share with you, when we had a Teams group, when we had Randy and Mike on it respectively, our councilman friends. Mike was the one that really got involved in having all 5 of our advanced life support ambulances that were all uniform. I don't know if you remember that. Randy did that, and Mike, and that's been nothing but a great success. And every 10 plus years, we do get to turn those out. So we also did get to save $50,000 on we are not purchasing a LifePak cardiac monitor because we just got those last year in a grant for 5 of them. So we won't see that again until 2027.
So Don, you said that this piece of equipment mostly meets the specification requirements that you have.
Okay, I'll give you an example.
Normally, if it either does or it doesn't, right? When you go out for RFQ type stuff.
Everything meets
except no matter what.
Everything except the Horton has a proprietary of their air occupancy protection system. That will not have, that's the only ambulance service that actually has the occupancy protection system. We will be going with a harness system, a 5-point harness system, and the EMS spec team researched that greatly and said that would be perfectly fine. So they'll be restrained as they're going to emergency services and transport to the hospital.
That's everybody that's in the vehicle, that's in the back. They have this harness on, is that in case you have a wreck?
Correct.
Like, yeah,
yeah. Harness system. So yes, we still bring it out.
It's a pretty neat system. I understand. Yeah, they can still move around. So if there is, it will actually suck them back in through the bench.
Yep.
Cool. And it still allows them to move around so they can take care of the patient. It's fine.
Just a point of clarification. Because when we get to the next two items, those come out of enterprise funds. These dollars are in the 212 fund.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. City Manager?
Yeah, so, do you want to take the next two items together?
Yes.
Okay, so, very, the same discussion. I think maybe one difference here is that ordering these items now lock in 2024 pricing versus, the escalated 25 pricing. They are planned, capital purchases out of the solid waste fund. Earlier in an enterprise fund. So I'll let you give you guys the details. The deeds.
Yeah, so two separate purchases. The first one here is the payloader. The next one will be the compactor. So Scott Davis, Superintendent Davis, he's our new superintendent out the landfill for the solid waste division. He did some research on this. He's looking ahead already in the CIP, seeing what we're gearing up for to buy in the next 5 years for equipment. We've made a couple purchases this year with trucks and another payloader that was due this year. Those are underway. What he found in those dealings with the vendors is a couple reasons for bringing this forward. One is to get it sooner, just like Chief Rowland alluded to on the ambulance side of things. But the other one is that the vendors are willing to lock in 24 pricing for a 25 unit. And this too is, we're just signing the paperwork, sign a purchase agreement. They get the thing ordered to get it built. We take delivery after January 1 of 25. We get billed after January 1 of 25. So there'd be no dollars expended in 24. We would just know going into the 25 budget cycle that not only was this a projected expenditure on the CIP, it's going to be locked in because of this commitment if the council decides to. So we get about a $15,000 to $30,000 savings on this 25 unit. That's the projected increase if we wait to buy it 25 that we would incur if we don't buy it now. So that 15 to 30 grand savings is significant enough to make this I don't want to say a no-brainer, but it makes it logical on why we would want to go this route. Other points, Scott, I'm forgetting about on this particular one. Oh, the trade-in. You want to touch on that real quick? The trade-in value?
Well, yeah, the trade-in that we were chatting about briefly when we first came in relates to the compactor.
But the payloader trade-in is.
The loader trade-in for this particular machine is our current, the Volvo. It's 10 years old. It's pushing 15,000 hours, long in the tooth. Which is why, another reason why I'm being proactive in trying to secure the equipment purchase at today's pricing for next year so that our scheduled equipment turns are happening in the year that we need them to be turned in, right? And that way we're not keeping a piece of equipment for a year longer out of warranty, worn out, or we're potentially going to be hit with large maintenance expenditures. So we can, because these pieces of equipment have a 8 to 12 month build time.
The other point on the trade-in I was going to make is that they're also willing to lock that price in for us today.
Yes.
As the piece of equipment sits today, we get to use it the whole rest of the year, but they're guaranteeing that price with us today.
Yes. Yeah.
So not only are we getting the 25 unit at 24 pricing, we're getting the old unit traded off for its value today, even before we use it for the rest of the year. Trade value is only 25 grand on that unit.
Have it done through Sourcewell, correct?
This is a Sourcewell purchase, yeah.
Yes.
Yep. Through RDO, yeah.
And then one was RDO and one was somebody else, wasn't it?
Butler with the compactor. Yeah.
You want to go to the compact? Second, that another area, separate. Okay.
Same thing with this one. It's just a lot more expensive piece of equipment. This is the compactor. Replace the old one. Again, this was anticipated to be purchased or is anticipated to be purchased in 2025 according to our capital improvement plan. So it's not like it's a 27 purchase that we're trying to move up or anything like that. This is where it was earmarked. The good thing about the enterprise funds is we set our rates based on that capital improvement plan. We know where our rates are at, what our revenues are going to be. We know what dollars we're saving up in order to meet these needs. So that those enterprise funds are a lot more accommodating to meet your needs because you're setting your rates in order to meet those needs. So this piece of equipment is a high dollar purchase, but our rates are set, our revenues are in place, the dollars would be there. All that's set up and programmed for a 2025 purchase. Again, the savings on this one, between 40 and 70 grand by locking in 24 pricing on a 25 unit. This one, there's potential for a trade-in. We have to do a little bit more research on that, whether it's worth exercising the trade or keeping the old unit on site as a secondary piece of equipment for the operations. We would I'm trying to think through out loud here on the fly, how we would execute whether we'd want to, how we would decide whether we want to execute the trade-in or not. We could vet that with the vendor, get a final number on what our trade value would be. I'm guessing we could sign this purchase agreement with or without trade, and then they let us add that trade value later if we wanted to, right?
Yes.
Okay. So that's probably what we would do. We would get all the information on the trade value for our old compactor and then decide whether that's worth it. You could bring that forward to the council for a solid recommendation, your final check off, whether you want us to trade that off or not. But otherwise, same situation, different piece of equipment.
Those compactors only last, because you're talking about a 2020, they only last 5 years. $1.5 piece of equipment.
Scott, could you speak to the condition of that one and what?
No, you depending upon the hours and our existing machine right now has comparatively low hours on it. So when it was purchased with a guaranteed buyback of $245,000. The vendor did that blindly, not knowing what its condition would be 5 years in the future or what its hours would be. So that's a worst case scenario of what the trade-in value will be. I suspect it will be worth more than that because it is a fairly low hour machine. I can't speak to why the city put it on a 5-year rotation. I obviously haven't been here that long. They are extremely expensive machines to repair. So I suspect that was part of the philosophy is once that was out of warranty, is we didn't want to have the exposure of that frontline machine coming up with very, very expensive repairs. The other thing to consider, and this will come up for when we get to it at the council session, is this is probably the most crucial piece of equipment we have at the landfill, and it's the only machine that we have, being the only compactor. So depending upon what the trade-in value comes in, I granted it's going to be a sizable amount of money to consider, but I would give a lot of careful thought to keeping the other compactor that we have. It's in good condition, it's fairly low hours, and a backup machine is crucial. Because it's not a matter of when the machine breaks down, or if, it's just when. So something to think through.
Superintendent, could you speak to, you got a wealth of knowledge in the waste management industry, compactors in general, going back to the councilman's question, compactors in general, would you see a rotation, a cycling out of a 5-year, or is that in line with?
Not in the private sector, just because there's such a huge set. Typically loaders and compactors, you'll run for 15,000 hours.
How many hours an hour?
And our machine has 7,100-ish. It'll be at about 9,000 by the end of the year.
It's about half there.
So about halfway, a little more than halfway through. Typically, it's full lifespan.
How long is the warranty?
I want to say it was 2 years. It's typical, it's 24 months.
What kind of maintenance do you have on it right now, Scott? What kind of maintenance yearly do you have on that?
The spend?
Yeah, what does it normally cost in a calendar year? Is there-
Oh, I haven't looked at what we've spent going back. We just put $40,000-ish into it due to a cracked frame. That was an extensive repair. Butler Machinery, Caterpillar picked up more than that because it was partially covered as a factory defect. But yeah, that kind of speaks to how expensive these machines are to maintain.
And one other question comes from me.
Sure.
Mayor, we buy through our fire truck companies, we buy an extended warranty on top of ours. We get like is it 5 years, Scott? And then we buy the 2 year after that. So we get additional 2 more years for warranty. And we've had one of our engines go out on our truck, which would have cost us $75,000 to $100,000. So we saved all that money just recently. So
What's that run you?
I think we paid like 6,000 or 7,000. So it was expensive for us, but long term, I think we saved money.
All right, can I ask the gentleman a question?
Superintendent Davis?
Yep. If this was your decision and it wasn't on the CIP, would you be recommending the purchase of this? Now,
The purchase of the new
correct.
machine. Yes. Because I feel we should have 2 compactors at the landfill.
What happens today if compactor, whatever, which one you have, goes down for any, is there?
Well, that's a great question. In our existing machine with that cracked frame issue, was just recently down for a month. And when we first purchased it, it was also down for a month for a transmission issue. So we're unable to compact.
So we don't get like a loaner or rental or lease one?
No, they're just too specialized of a piece of equipment. So when you're unable to compact or compact sufficiently, right? We have to use the next most heavy machine that we have that's capable of running in the landfill cell, and that's just a dozer. So we're not getting the compacted density in the working area of the landfill cell the whole time that compactor is down. So if you think of a landfill as selling airspace, right? That's essentially what we're doing. And if you're not compacting to the appropriate density level of the waste, we're squandering that valuable asset, right? That the city has.
Wasting revenue potential.
Yeah, we're wasting revenue. Additionally, in future years, what will happen to that area where we're putting waste and not compacting it to the density that we aim for is that will eventually settle just due to the weight of the waste on top of it and the final cover of the landfill cell, and you'll end up with a depression that will have to be repaired at some point in the future.
It's just a suggestion, but have you ever thought of using golf carts? I'm just saying. Sometimes you gotta think out of the box. Yeah. Gotta let that little sign on back.
There you go.
You need a permit?
Where's Tim at? Yeah, do we need permits?
Tim left, there's no permits left.
Well, that was my last comment.
That's good.
None of us believe you.
That's all I had, Mayor. If everybody's fine with that, we'll bring both of those purchase agreements forward.
Yep.
All right. Council, that's the agenda. No reason to go into executive session.
We have to read ahead items.
Oh, I printed off the. All right, future items right ahead.
There you go. That's perfect. I can see it.
Yep, I got it.
So, in addition to the items that we've talked about this evening, coming up on the 15th, we'll have the minutes, the ambulance write-offs. We've got a vacation of a driveway easement, potentially final change order. That's one of those asterisk ones. All the paperwork's done. We do have a request to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the Early Learner Self-Code Program. So take one and pass it around to review before next Monday. Firehouse Subs is giving us a donation. Police Department, the GMP for the wastewater treatment facility project, that likely will not be on the 15th, but it will be coming in the near future. We've got some park and rec items that need to be surplused, some volunteers we need to approve. Our K-9 Sadie, we need to surplus and retire her. A building permit extension for Stony Point that likely will also not be on the 15th, but it is coming.
It's looking more likely that it will be now. We got some information today.
Okay, be prepared for that. And just, I guess maybe a little bit on that. Their existing permit is expired and it requires council authorization to extend their building permit.
This is specific to the condos at the point and everything associated with that building permit. Nothing to do with the rest of the Stony Point property, the campground or any of that area. Specific to the condos building permit.
So basically allows them to finish the unfinished.
Correct. As a comparison, we did something similar for the Olive House a year or two ago, where we had to take action at the council level to extend their permit because it had already been extended up to 3 years. The Stony Point condos permit was issued initially for 3 years, and that time has come and gone.
Yes.
And so that's why the council action is necessary.
Given the sensitivity of that location, I expect some.
Know some idea of why it needs to be extended or voters. Yeah, essentially, so because it's expired, they technically shouldn't be doing any work out there and the work's not done. So we have a punch list of items they need to finish that they technically can't commence with because the permit's expired. So it's kind of one of those.
Like a layer of asphalt.
Exactly.
So that's when you come in there, you don't go boom.
Yep, that's fine. All right. Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you go to? Let me ask a question about that just for a second, to be clear. So if I just saw this advertised the other day, where you buy the empty one, you gotta finish it, right? Does that require its own building?
It would, yeah.
That's so, we're talking about the base.
Yep.
Property,
Yep.
okay.
And with that, there were the private drive, certain gutter, storm sewer, some sidewalk, there are all these other components that with that overarching building permit that are still also on the punch list.
So then we have surplusing of a police vehicle and trading it in. And then if any combination of two of you have all of the items you want to put on the 15th, just send them to me. That was my attempt at a joke. I'm sorry.
I'm telling you, like.
That was
really a good one. That was awesome. Went right over my head.
Very sorry.
Councilman Bueller.
Well,
Jeez, Louise, have some food.
I'm thinking of something that possibly would add to this list. And that's the convenience fee. Run into that anybody yet at Cattail? And I don't know where else we're doing it. But I went out to pay my membership for Cattail. For the golf course, right? And they said, well, you gotta pay a convenience fee now because of our fitness. And so, of course, I wasn't happy about that. So there's two of us. So we went home. We had to go home and get a checkbook to come in, because then if we did it, write out a check, it saved us like $40 or something, $20. But But to me, I mean, every time somebody uses a card, which everybody uses a card, they're gonna get this convenience fee because of our system. But
We get charged to use
We
this.
get
Yeah.
Bruce, I would tell you that
I hate-
a lot of businesses are doing that right now.
Yep.
we don't need all them damn loaders, we can get rid of that. No, I'm serious. I would like to have a discussion on that.
Would you like that at the May work session? Or
Yeah.
do you want this
Yeah,
for
work
some kind
session.
of action?
Work session, please.
So there's two parts to like, so there's the credit card fee that's charged, and then there's also a fee that's charged when you register online for Park Rec. There's two separate things. So are you talking about? You shouldn't be really seeing the fee for swiping a credit card. You're seeing more the fee, I think, for registering online for activity.
No, I wasn't online. So I went to the golf course and he said, well, you know, if you use a card, it's gonna be convenience for you. So I was that. Yeah, I'm like, well, we never did that before.
Well, we have a new processor out
Oh,
there.
yeah, so we rule on the damn computer. There it is.
Well, welcome
Catch
to.
That's Steve, man.
Old guy.
On that note,
We have transactions of land bills that are less than 50 cents with a debit card.
Yeah, there you go.
And it costs, I think $6 to process a 50-cent.
Well, the land transfer, okay, but not.
I feel like this is a conflict. You can't.
Just don't try to
Put it on the
pickle
agenda,
card.
so we're gonna take on it.
Councilman Shutty.
I was just based off like not there when you surplus and retire. At what point does a councilman get surplus and retire?
That would like to have that discussion.
I don't know anybody like it.
He doesn't talk much, but when he talks, people listen.
I will tell you, we're coming on to this time of season again, and I hear about it throughout the summer. Just heard it after church, not this last weekend, but a weekend before. People are upset with a lot of the rules that apparently have come in place over the last couple of years at City Park. I don't know exactly what those rules are. When they explain them to me, some of it sounds unnecessary. I don't know what, and I don't know how they came about. I don't know how it was justified. I think at some point we gotta take a look at that. Because as I've had people talk to me about it, it's like, well, that doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, I'm saying that to myself.
Did you give us an example, Mike?
ATVs.
Well,
Can't have.
some of it is the use of golf carts, ATVs. The other is you can't have more than one vehicle per campsite or something like that. Yeah, I don't know what the rules are exactly, people. Well, I'm saying, all right, so now you've got a couple people that drive out there, or somebody, they haul their UTV, and, which is street legal, but you can't drive it in there. So there's just a number of things that people are going, it's taken away from the experience out there. And my guess is at some point, someone or once thought there was probably some things that were maybe beyond what they were willing or able to control out there. I don't know, but I think that should at least get looked at.
Yeah. So those rules got put into place prior to changing the park board ordinance. So the park board did that. There was no council ultimately authorization. I think the best process for that would be to have Dusty put that on the park board agenda and then them bring a recommendation forward for you all to vet out and approve or deny.
I'd like to understand why they would put in, like, what the justification was.
Convenience fees.
I'll touch on that a little bit, Mike, because it was just a couple of years ago. My son was camping out there. And his in-laws went out there, and then we went out there, and then my daughter went out there, to straight up to cars. Well, we had to move our cars. We had to take them over to the Casino Speedway parking lot and then walk back over. Because they got quite rude about it. No, get them out of here.
That's what I've heard too.
Yeah.
We do have, new personnel, this year. at the campground. So that sometimes it's how you apply the rules also that makes a difference to some people, so.
I'd say of the complaints that I've heard, it's as much the way that someone was dealt with personally as much as the rule. I mean, the rule did make some sense to the people, but then the way that it was applied was also.
Because none of us were taking up anybody else's space, you know, as far as vehicles was, but.
And that's just of what I have heard,
Yeah.
so I can't attest.
Well, that's a fair assessment. I mean,
Yep.
or the same thing, so.
No, that's why I brought that part up, because it wasn't very pleasant. So.
Right. Now's the time for public comment. Seeing none, I'll close public comment.
All of the comments have been made.
There's no reason to go into executive session, therefore I'll entertain a motion. Motion made by Councilor Enos, seconded by Councilman Slater. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries.
Good meeting. Good meeting.